We're now live. Good evening and welcome to the July 23rd, 2025 meeting of the Montgomery County Historic Preservation Commission. My name is Karen Burdett and I am the chair. I will now ask the commissioners and staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left. And before the staff starts, I want to make sure that Commissioner Commissioner Nassar, who is remote, has a chance to introduce herself first. So,
Mark Dominiani.
Jeffrey Haynes.
Julie Pelletier.
This is Commissioner Doman.
Zara Nasser.
Devin Martha, Historic Preservation Staff.
Dan Bruckert, Historic Preservation Staff.
Laura DiPasquale, Historic Preservation Staff.
Rebecca Ballo, Historic Preservation Staff.
Serena Bolliger, Historic Preservation Staff.
Thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing and work session for the Bud House at 18583 Brook Road, Sandy Spring.
Thank you. Good evening. Serena Bolliger, Cultural Resource Planner for the record. The purpose of, can everyone see there you go, the Bud House on the screen. So the purpose of tonight's hearing and work session is to determine whether the Bud House near Sandy Spring meets designation criteria for listing in the Locational Atlas and Index of Historic Sites and Master Plan for Historic Preservation. The Bud House was built in 1912 by Perry Budd, a Sandy Spring native, lifelong educator, and member of the prolific Budd family, who were the earliest settlers of a number of African American communities in the Sandy Spring area. Overall, staff found that the property meets the designation criteria and requests that the HPC takes the following actions. 1, finds that the house meets the designation criteria. 2, recommends that the planning board lists the property to the Locational Atlas. And 3, recommends that the County Council lists the property in the Master Plan for Historic Preservation. Resources listed to the Master Plan must satisfy historical and cultural significance or architectural and design significance. The designation process includes hearings at the Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Board, and County Council, who ultimately decide whether a resource is listed. A little bit about our public process. So in 2022, the current property owner, who's here with us tonight, thank you for joining us, approached the Historic Preservation staff about designation. Staff met the owner at the home for several site visits and worked with them to survey the home. We did research at several archival institutions and worked and discovered numerous references to the Budd family in Sandy Spring historic resources and built an understanding of the significant contributions of the Budd family to Sandy Spring and the Olney areas. So next I'll give an overview about the home's site. The Budd House is located in Sandy Spring, which is in the northeastern part of Montgomery County, as indicated by the red pin. It's about a mile north of the historic Sandy Spring Friends Meeting House and the Sharp Street Church. You'll see it indicated here by the red pin. There are several designated properties in the Sandy Spring areas, including several white Quaker homes, the Sandy Spring Historic District, the Sharp Street Church, and the Oddfellows Lodge. This property has never been evaluated. However, we have considered African American resources in this area in the past. In 1976, an African American historic district consisting of pre-1900 era homes was included in the original Locational Atlas for its representation of the prosperous free Black community that was established here during the 1800s. By the time the district was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission in 1986, it no longer had enough historic fabric or cohesion to be designated as a district, so the history of those families in that community is not represented on this map of existing designated sites. So about the house itself, the Budd House has stood in the historic Black Enclave on Brook Road in Sandy Spring for over 113 years. The house was constructed about 1912 by Perry Budd, and since the home was built, it has remained almost constantly in the possession of his descendants, largely through matrilineal descent. Perry Budd was a successful teacher and education administrator whose path represents the advanced academic success of Black residents in the Sandy Spring community. The Budd House is a two-story, three-bay, wood-frame, side-gable dwelling with a rear L, a circa 1930s or 1940s one-story rear kitchen addition, and a two-story, one-bay projection in the interior corner of the L. Historically, it was inhabited as a 2.5-story home with children sleeping in the top floor, but as most recently, the top floor has been used for storage. Now I'll give a brief overview of the history of the property. Beginning in the early 1700s, members of the Snowdon, Brooke, and Thomas families founded a white Quaker community around a fresh spring site and called it Sandy Spring. In the Sandy Spring area, the Quaker community consisted almost exclusively of agriculturalists known for their exploits, studies, and farming. The Quakers' defining creed champions peace, equality, and community, and they became early adopters of the abolition movement. While many Quakers in Sandy Spring and nearby Brookville initially relied on enslaved labor, the state-level administration, called the Maryland Yearly Meeting, issued a ruling in 1760 discouraging involvement in slavery. The Quakers of Sandy Spring were among the first in Maryland to systematically manumit their enslaved workforce. By the early 1800s, virtually all members of the Sandy Spring Monthly Meeting had freed the people they held in bondage. Therefore, Black residents had early opportunity for land ownership, paid labor, and education. Several free Black communities developed north of Sandy Springs locus, along the road eventually known as Brook Road. On the screen is an 1865 map of Sandy Spring and an image of the Sandy Spring Friends Meeting House, built in 1817. The Black community around the intersection of Brook Road and Chanley Mill Road was considered part of Sandy Spring, whereas further down the road, a community named Cincinnati and later Brinklow developed near New Hampshire Avenue. Elsewhere in Montgomery County, Black neighborhoods developed largely as standalone communities, whereas the Black community in Sandy Spring and Cincinnati existed as enclaves within the white community because of the relative interracial goodwill with the Quakers. Because of their social acceptance within Quaker life, the Sandy Spring and Cincinnati Black communities had access to the Quaker stores and services in ways that the independent communities did not. Quakers were staunch proponents of education and had supported, provided, or funded Black education in Sandy Spring long before education for African Americans was provided at a public level. The first public schoolhouse for Black children was built in Sandy Spring 6 years before the county even began providing public education for African American children. About the Budd family, we have records of them living as free citizens in Ashton and Olney since at least the 1840s. Generations of the Budd family have been recorded as important contributors to Sandy Springs Black community growth. They are identified as some of the first supporters of the Sharp Street Church and the Jerusalem Mount Pleasant United Methodist Church. They quickly became prolific landowners. The earliest known family landowner was Daniel Budd in 1855. You can see on this map that by 1879, several members of the Budd family owned land in the Sandy Spring area, including Lydia, Samuel, J.T., and Hamilton Budd. The subject site is marked with a red arrow, and the surrounding Budd properties are marked in blue. The Budds worked in critical professions within the community. Richard Perry Budd and Samuel Budd, this is Richard Perry Budd, is Perry Budd's uncle, and Samuel Budd operated a blacksmith shop together to the west of the current Budd house on Brook Road. Records indicate that they were employed as blacksmiths for several prominent Quaker families and may have aided in the construction of master plan historic sites including Cloverly, Oakley, and Bloomfield, which were built by the Bentleys in this era. Receipts demonstrate, work completed for the Bentleys on the Brookville Academy and the Sandy Spring store. 18 acres of Richard Perry Budd's estate on Brook Road were sold for the construction of the Maryland Normal and Agricultural Institute, a pioneering trade school established in Sandy Spring for Black students in 1908. Community historians identified 4 circa 1860s Budd family homes in a 1983 Black oral history study of northeastern Montgomery County, and they identified them as having local significance. However, since then, all 4 have been demolished. The subject site is marked with a red arrow, and the surrounding Budd properties on Brook Road are indicated in blue. Now moving on to the builders of our house. Perry Budd was born in 1861 to Samuel and Lydia Budd. Their 6 children likely all attended the Sharp Street School after it was established in 1866. However, Montgomery County's lack of higher education opportunities for Black students indicates that he and his family must have made substantial efforts to secure him the secondary education needed to prepare for college. Despite the structural obstacles to gaining a primary and secondary education, at 18, Perry Budd was accepted to study at the Centenary Biblical Institute, later Morgan State University, where he attended for 8 years, starting in 1879. According to family history, Perry Budd was in Hampton, Virginia, circa 1886, where he met and tutored Amanda, also recorded as Alamanda Armstead. She may have originated from the Hampton Roads region of Virginia, as she was listed in 1880 living with her adopted parents. She was recorded as mixed race in the census, and family history records her as having Native American ancestry. The Hampton Institute operated a Native American education program for approximately 40 years in the late 19th and early 20th centuries that graduated 1,400 students. And though no records from that time indicate that Amanda was among the Native students enrolled in that program, there was a free black settlement called the Reservation, located near the Institute in the 19th century, and some residents may have intermarried with the local Kiskiak Native community. Perry Budd and Amanda Armstead returned to Sandy Spring together and married in November of 1887. She is recorded as baking for and supporting the Sharp Street Church and entering competitions with her baked goods. She is also remembered as a prolific homemaker who was always kept her kitchen open to those who needed help. Perry Budd began teaching at Linden School, also known as School Number 4, in the Mechanicsville district, later known as Olney, in 1887. He took a leadership role in the county education system, attending the Maryland State Progressive Teachers Convention as the county representative later that year. He continued teaching for at least 13 years. In 1905, he was appointed by the county school commissioners as a trustee for the Sandy Spring School, likely where he had begun his life as a student. He was then appointed as a reporter for the Afro-American in 1908, where he reported on education-related and school board activity until at least 1928. 4 generations of the Budd family have lived in this home. Perry and Amanda's children and grandchildren were raised here, and it remained a home base as some of the family members traveled in and out of state to make their fortunes. Perry Budd died in 1933, and the home was purchased by his son, Charles Budd. Zadie Riggs purchased the property in 1953 and lived at the house with her husband, William Riggs, and their 3 children and some grandchildren. Zadie Riggs was employed as a domestic worker and worked at a school cafeteria in the 1950s, while her husband commuted by bus to Washington, D.C., where he was employed by the British Embassy. Under Zadie Riggs' ownership, the family supplemented their income by selling lumber surrounding the house from the wooded rear of the property. During the mid-20th century, the property surrounding the house was planted with apple, pear, and persimmon orchards, as well as walnut trees and a grape vineyard. Zadie canned much of the food in the house. The property passed from Zadie to Mary Alice Rose in 1990. She graduated from business school and worked as a supervisor for the National Association of Letter Carriers. Her husband, Ronald Wayne Rose Sr., an Air Force veteran, and Romaine Marie Rose, their daughter, now lives in the home and requested the designation. By the way, on the screen you could see photos of the family taken at the home through the years. The house has remained remarkably intact since its 1912 construction, and despite some typical modernizations, retains its striking size, massing, and design. Notable landscape features include the hedgerow in front of the home, which has been there since approximately the 1920s. The Budd House meets 2 designation criteria, as listed in Chapter 24A of the Montgomery County Code, and retains historic integrity to express its period of significance. It fulfills 1A, the historic resources, character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the county, state, or nation. The Budd House is representative of the development of the African American community in Sandy Spring. The house was constructed by Perry Budd, a member of the prolific Budd family, which settled several of the free black communities in and around Sandy Spring beginning in the early 1800s. Ancestors of Perry Budd were founding supporters of several of the historic churches that the black enclaves used as a social lifeline, and a portion of the family's holdings was used for the establishment of the Normal and Agricultural Institute, a pioneering institution for higher education for the black community. Although the Sharp Street United Methodist Church and Oddfellows Lodge have been designated as master plan historic sites, there are no dwellings associated with any of the black enclaves around Sandy Spring designated on the master plan for historic preservation. Most of the resources associated with the black enclave of Sandy Spring and Cincinnati are no longer extant or highly altered. Therefore, the Budd House is a critical resource that represents a significant and unique part of the experience in the county. The house also fulfills 1D. It exemplifies the cultural, economic, social, political, or historical heritage of the county and its communities. The Budd House has character, interest, and value representing the unique opportunities available to black residents in Quaker communities before and after emancipation. Due to the progressive political environment fostered by the Quakers in Sandy Spring, Black inhabitants had early access to education and paid labor and established one of the earliest working and middle-class Black communities in Montgomery County. Despite widespread slavery and general discrimination, the Black community in Sandy Spring were able to gain an early foothold into land ownership and community development, evident from the establishment of the many Black neighborhoods in the first elementary and first upper-level schools for Black children in the county. Harry Budd was in the second generation of landowners in his family and was able to construct a large, two-story house at a time when many other families of color in Montgomery County were building small vernacular houses. Although a house of this size would typically be unusual for a Black for a Black elementary school teacher elsewhere in the county, this large, multi-story home is representative of the type of construction built by second-generation landowners in Sandy Spring, although few examples survive. Many resources, particularly homes, have been lost due to the demolition of late 19th and early 20th century buildings. Preservation would recognize a cultural asset that reflects generations of African American life and underscores the importance of Black education to early generations of free Black residents. The Budd family were engaged in all aspects of the relatively integrated Sandy Spring community, farming for white Quakers and helping them construct important civic spaces, while also working centrally in the establishment of the Black community. Staff recommends that an environmental setting that incorporates the entire 2.7-acre parcel containing the historic Budd dwelling at 18583 Brook Road. Again, overall, staff found that the property meets the designation criteria and requests that the HPC takes the following actions. 1, finds that the house meets the designation criteria. 2, recommends that the planning board lists the property to the locational atlas. And 3, recommends that the county council list the property in the master plan for historic preservation. And this is our tentative timeline. We're hoping to go to the planning board in the fall and then on to the county council. And our last slide. Any questions?
Thank you. And we will now ask the property owner to speak if you.
Good evening.
Not just yet.
My name is Romaine Marie Rose, and I am the great-granddaughter of Richard Perry Budd. And Amanda Armstead. These are wonderful portraits that even as an infant coming in the living room and in the corner of the room, these were displayed. I will be 72 years old in 6 months. And it's been absolutely incredible that when I glance over and able to see these photos, these portraits, I'm just thrilled to be here, and I thank you all. My family, who represented the African American and Native American heritage, they were manumitted pre-Civil War, and was given a deed of 4 acres by the Quakers of Sandy Spring. In fact, it was the Quakers and others in the community who helped build the homestead, which locals called the Black Mansion of Sandy Spring. My family was a pillar of the community and were raised as Methodists in the Sharp Street Methodist Church. I want to thank the Commission for this opportunity to speak on behalf of my ancestors, and I look forward to officially recognizing my ancestral property to the Sandy Spring Museum, Slave Museum, and other Maryland historic preservation organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other witnesses that want to testify? Do you know of here?
Nobody else has signed up to testify, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this point, the commissioners can ask questions of staff or of Ms. Rose. Would anybody like to start? Commissioner Doman.
Thank you for coming before the commission, and thank staff for the detailed presentation that you just made. Appreciate all of that. Is there any intent to put like a plaque or something? Some of the historic houses will have something either in front of the house towards the road or maybe a plaque on the side of the house. Is there any intent to do anything like this for the property?
Thank you, Commissioner Doman, for the question. Not at this time, but after the designation, we would like to continue to work with the property owner, with Ms. Rose, to recognize this property either through a plaque or through a marker. We do have our historic marker program. Typically for our markers, we've been coming a couple of years behind historic designations. It takes about a year or so to manufacture the markers and then get them put up. And then also all of our designations have a virtual presence on our website through the report. But yes, to answer your question, I think more succinctly, yes, we would love to keep working with the property owner and love her thoughts as well.
In fact, my thought was maybe 5 years ago, I had made this comment prior, a recent passing of my mother, Mary Alice. I stated to her there on the property, there was a red delicious and green apple tree sitting right beside the famous hedge. So that, I told her, in fact, to pay homage to her and my grandmother, Zadie. I had planned to put, in fact, I had mentioned it to, I think, I'm not sure if I mentioned it to Serena, but maybe the consultant, that I, in fact, want my own special signage. And in fact, had started investigating and checking out exactly the costs and everything, but absolutely. And it would be designated in the front on the right-hand side of the property, and right there along the road. You could absolutely be able to see it. And I've even started designing and creating. So I appreciate you asking that question, but that definitely is one of my priorities.
And
So I
Ms.
thank you.
Rose, oh, sorry, is there also a marker for your family at the Sandy Spring Museum already? I'm sorry? Is there a marker for your family at the Sandy Spring Museum already? I remember the museum made a collection of markers based on the book about the Sandy Spring legacy, and I think that there was a marker about Perry Budd and the Budd family at the Sandy Spring Museum. Oh, okay. I will check. Okay, I will confirm and find out, but I think I saw it. Okay. I will do.
Commissioner Doman again.
I have one other comment. It may or may not be of interest, but in the write-up, whenever you use the word black, you capitalize it. But when you use the word white, you do not capitalize it. And I was looking at, this was a big deal in the Washington Post several years ago, and to capitalize or not to capitalize an adjective in front of a name or a farm, something like that. And I was looking at the paper today, and when they used the word white, they did capitalize it. And I was noticing in your report you did not. So you may want to go back and revisit that. That's my comment. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We also have a style guide in the planning department, and you can also see like the language in our reports have also evolved over the last 10 years, where we used to exclusively use the term African American to describe a number of these communities, and then the descriptors have changed to the Black communities. And in our style guides, we do, as you correctly noted, Black is uppercase and then white is in lowercase. And to your point, I'm sure that the style guide will continue to evolve, so you might see different verbiage as the reports come down along the years. But thank you for noticing that.
I wanted to comment about that also. During that period, it would have been Negro. Would not have been Black African, African American. Would not have been. So for today's generation and future generations, they could relate if you say African American. or during that period. Thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Thanks. I'm looking at some of the photos in our report that I don't think ended up in the presentation. There's a picture from 1975. I'm curious, I don't know if we can put it up. Can we put it up?
Can you let us know what page of the report that is, and then we can try and pull that up?
45.
Okay.
Are you interested in the siding? I think I have a
Yeah,
picture
I'm
of it up.
curious about the siding, and then I'm curious about the fire, like how much damage happened. I see there's a photo of it post-fire where it's all kind of boarded up, but that doesn't have the shingle siding that's in the picture from 75. So I'm just curious about the evolution of the outside of the house.
I can answer that. It was 5 years ago. The fire mainly was contained in the attic. And that with the fire department, and unfortunately, when there's a fire, it's the water damage that does most of the, and so that when Travelers, the insurance group came in, he said, guess what? We're gonna make you whole. We're you know, they've done just so much damage. We're afraid of mold. And it was just incredible. If you were to walk in on the first level, it looked as though there was no fire. It was all contained. Pretty much second floor, 2 of the bedrooms, and the attic. But the attic pretty much, and during that period, they decided, okay, if anything, we're not able to extend, change, you know, from a historic standpoint, but we can go. So exactly, and I said, if we do anything, I'd like to keep, you know, have it maintained, maintain a metal roofing, whatever. I have all those as part of the artifacts. The original, that was the original tin roof. Had never been replaced. Never, ever been replaced. And I have a piece of it, in fact, in the basement. Original doorknobs, everything. I mean, over 100 years old.
How did the house go from, so there's a picture from 1975 where it has what looks like maybe asphalt or asbestos, sort of brick-looking shingles on the outside of it, but then I noticed in the fire picture, what didn't burn is like wood siding. So I'm just kind of curious.
What was fantastic about this particular area of Sandy Spring, or you had a large mill, and a lot of what was built was utilized from the surrounding areas. And that was made mostly of cedar and poplar, is what I was told. And it kept away a lot of the termite issues and things like that. I think that's the reason why, because of that type of wood, as to why the house had maintained its overall structure. It was absolutely incredible. My uncle, in fact, the general contractor who handled everything 5 years ago was absolutely shocked that our families were able to maintain without any type of insulation or anything. It was just strictly wood and plaster.
This picture, I
Whoops.
just lost it. Sorry.
The original structure?
No, this is a picture from 1975, and it's got page 45. Oh, figure 7.
Guess what that is? That is roofing tile.
Oh, okay. And
That
was
is
that
roofing.
was that over like the cedar?
Over the cedar.
Okay.
Over the cedar. My uncle, both uncles, decided to try to, I guess, insulate the home even further. And in fact, I think that was your question, or someone from your staff had asked, what in the world is that?
And when did it come off? Do
It
you
wasn't
know?
shingles. I'm sorry?
When did it come off? Because it looks like even after the fire, you've got the wood siding back.
That may have come off in the 70s, because there was another picture of white aluminum siding.
Oh, it's been all kinds of things.
With black window shutters. And so that may have been in the early 70s. That was removed. That was during the 40s and 50s. And then 1970s, there's a I guess, what, a fourth photo showing the black shutters and the white.
Right.
Remember
And so I
that
think it
aerial,
was,
that aerial photo? We had the airplane to take a picture
yes.
of the entire property. Okay.
So I
And
think it was
then-
toward the end of the 70s, because this photo,
don't
you're
know
right,
if
is
they had a
76, I
chance to
think,
see that.
75.
Okay,
Yes.
so, I see. Okay, I'm just curious. It's
That's
had
okay.
lots of different looks over the years.
It was called survival.
But I'm happy to see, the roof shingles are no longer on the house, so thank
no.
you.
So after the fire, I was able to upgrade and have it look, which I think they did, this general contractor did a fantastic job. Fantastic job.
This is Chair Burdett. I'm curious that the orchard was planted in the back.
Yes.
Is it still?
Unfortunately, because most of the families had moved on, and it took a lot of work. And during that time period, especially my grandmother, Zadie, she was a domestic housekeeper, cook, was known for across the farm workers, ironing, pressing, cleaning, doing that type of thing. But to keep the household together, everything we ate was off the land. So we had sickle pears, apples, peaches, watermelon. We had everything one could imagine. If we didn't have it, our next door neighbor had it. And so for us, it was just maintaining. And back during those days, you didn't have running water. So Sandy Spring, maybe a half a mile behind the property, was the actual spring. And that was the task of my uncles and my brothers, to carry pails of water and to bring up in order for her to wash clothes, feed us, and cook. And we did what we had to do. And in close to the living room area was the old stove, black stove. And you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you chop wood from the back of the house. It was nothing but fir trees, just a lot of fir trees and black walnut trees. But we had almost every fruit you could imagine: persimmons, figs. I mean, strawberries, everything. I mean, it was, we were very blessed. I guess my great-grandfather, they would go to Baltimore, and they would get these different seedlings or whatever. And that's how they were able to do it, to survive.
And you still live in the house?
I'm currently the owner. I was able to inherit it from my mother as part of her will. I'm the oldest of 4, and I had told her 20 years ago, I said, if anyone, I'd be more than happy to take the helm and maintain this property. It'd been threatened maybe twice, 3 times. And I said, no, we're not selling. This has a history behind it. And having worked 42 years for both federal government and private industry, I was familiar with a lot of families that wanted to maintain their properties and they couldn't. And when I was given that opportunity, now having been retired 8 years now, the attitude was that, no, if I do anything, if I can pay homage to the females, really, of the family, the 4 generations, it was really the women. If they had to work 2 jobs, 3 jobs. My great-grandmother, Amanda, she was out there. She was doing what she had to do to keep a roof over their heads. And it was, they had 13 children to take care of.
I just recently read a comment about it's always the women in the family who keep things together and keep, survive, basically.
It was a lot, and the men were very seldom home. They were out, in fact, Zadie, my grandfather worked for the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. He was never home. He would come in once a month, give her the check, bring, goodies and whatever, plenty of Christmas gifts and whatever, and then check back to Washington, D.C. So it was rare that we saw the men. I mean, but they were there, when it came to financial. But then when they got tired, and they said, no, we're selling, we're tired. The women said, no, we're keeping this property. And here I am, a testament to that.
Are there any other questions for staff or for the applicant? No? Well, one of the pleasures of the Historic Preservation Commission is when properties like this come forward and we have the opportunity to cast our vote, which we'll do tonight,
Thank you.
on this property, but finding properties that are, people think that, oh, all the historic properties, we have so many of them, and it's like, no, there are a lot of properties out there we still need to find and we need to designate and we need to preserve because they are significant, not only to the immediate family, but also to the community as a whole.
I truly agree, and I think when we look at the history of Montgomery County, we look at the history of the state of Maryland, 1776. I mean, we existed. And my thought is that I just wanted to pay homage not only to the African-American side, but also the Native American side, which is totally unusual. And that's another reason why I felt that it was important to come forward, because I said, how many families can you find with that type of situation? That, when I've spoken to some of the Native American groups, I mean, they're thrilled, they're tickled to even know that in Sandy Spring, we did have American Indians, family background. So a lot of things that I've learned over the years were because of Indians, American Indians, and how they may have cooked and prepared and taken care of their families was totally different from the way it was handled from African Americans, from blacks. Totally different. Yeah. But I credit all of them. They were all wonderful and God-fearing people. They really were.
Thank you. I think we need to take our vote now. And Commissioner Haynes, have you prepped the motion?
I move that the Historic Preservation Commission recognize that the Bud House meets two designation criteria listed in 24A3 of the county code, and that the planning board list the Bud House in the locational atlas and index of historic sites, as well as recommending that the county council designate the property in the master plan for historic preservation.
Do I have a second on this motion?
This is Commissioner Dominiani. I'd be happy to second this motion.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 No nays, no abstentions. This motion passes. Thank you very much for your stewardship and for the stewardship of your family.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
The staff will prepare this to go forward to the planning board.
All right.
And from the planning board, it'll go to the council. And you have our full support.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. And the Bud family, the Riggs family, and the Rose family. We all thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, we will be moving on to our HOPs, our Historic Area Work Permits, and we will be starting with the consent agenda. Let me see. Okay. Okay. Have the work permits been duly advertised?
Yes, Madam Chair, they were advertised in the July 9th edition of the Washington Times.
Thank you. If anyone is here to testify for any of the cases, please give a speaker form to staff and they will let us know that you are here to address one of the cases. We are going to begin by expediting the cases we believe can be expedited based on the staff reports. Is anyone here to speak in opposition to case 2B at 17 West Irving Street, Chevy Chase, case 2C at 7129 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park, and 2D at 7329 Baltimore Avenue, Tacoma Park?
Madam Chair, hearing no objections, I move that we approve the following historic area work permits in accordance with staff reports based upon the record before us and in consideration of the recommendations of the local advisory panels and including conditions recommended by staff. Hop number 1121820 at 17 West Irving Street, Chevy Chase. Hop number 1121920 at 7129 Maple Avenue, Tacoma Park. And hop number 1722773 at 7329 Baltimore Avenue, Tacoma Park.
Is there a second? Your mic.
Oh, this is Commissioner Pelletier, I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
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 No nays, no abstentions. This is a unanimous vote for these hops, and we thank Pete, the applicants, for preparing hops with the staff that can be easily approved. We will now move to the hops we're going to be hearing tonight. The first case we hear tonight is item 2E at 7221 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. This is Laura DiPasquale for the record. This is HOP Review 1122762 for fenestration alterations and installation of a new skylight at 7221 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park. The subject property includes a circa 1890s folk Victorian house classified as contributing in the Tacoma Park Historic District. The property is subject to review under, the project is subject to review under the Tacoma Park Historic District Guidelines, Chapter 24A of the Montgomery County Code, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. Subject property includes historic main block constructed in the 1890s with modifications made to the rear L, presumably around the 1930s prior to designation, and post-designation in 1994, 99, and 2005. On the left is the Sanborn map from 1927 showing the historic main block and rear L with an open rear porch. On the right is an undated photograph from our files, which likely dates to the 1980s or early 1990s, since the district was designated in 1992. Here are some photos of the property from HOP applications in 1994 and 1999, showing the formerly enclosed or formerly open porch seen in the 1920 Sanborn was later expanded and enclosed into a shed-roofed addition with 2 windows on the south elevation prior to designation. The property then received several modifications to the rear, including some minor fenestration alterations in 1994, construction of a 2-story rear addition that modified the original rear L and infilled the space over the earlier 1-story shed-roofed addition in 1999, and construction of a 2-story rear addition in 2005. Here are a few existing conditions photographs showing the property. Some views towards the north elevation, location of the proposed skylight in 2019 before construction of an addition next door, and in December 2024 after that addition and without foliage on the trees. Likewise, some views of the front and south side elevations in December to limit the coverage of the house by vegetation. And some views of the south elevation from the 2009 Google Street View to show visibility of the side and rear elevations from Cedar Avenue with reduced vegetation. So as previously mentioned, the applicants proposed to make numerous fenestration alterations, including installing a skylight on the north-facing roof slope of the 2005 rear addition, adding 2 new windows to the south side elevation of the post-1927 modified shed addition, replacing 2 existing first-floor windows on the rear elevation that were installed in 1994, and replacing existing French doors on the second floor of rear of the 2005 addition with 3 double-hung windows. No work is proposed to the front elevation. I also have some floor plans in case there are any questions. So staff supports the proposed alterations and recommends approval. Staff finds that all of the proposed alterations are in non-historic material, with the first floor side windows being added to the post-1927 shed addition, which had previously had 2 windows that had been modified numerous times. The first floor rear windows to be replaced, having been added to the post-1927 shed addition in 1994, the second floor windows to replace double doors in the 2005 addition, and the proposed skylight to be added to the 2005 addition. So here's a photo from the interior of the kitchen, looking south. You can see some of the modifications and an infilled window that's still in place. So based on the Tacoma Park Historic District guidelines for contributing resources, staff finds that the proposed windows, which are Marvin Ultimate wood double hungs with traditional putty slope profiles, are consistent in style, scale, proportion, and detailing with the historic resource. That the skylight is a minor alteration that does not directly front on a public right-of-way, and per the guidelines should be allowed as a matter of course. That the windows proposed on the south elevation, while not a major addition, are located towards the rear of the existing structure, so they're less visible from the public right-of-way. That no changes are proposed to the original window and door openings. And that the changes at the rear, on the rear elevation, which is not visible from the right-of-way, should also be allowed as a matter of course per the guidelines. Based on the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, staff finds that the proposal does not damage the historic character of the property or remove historic materials per Standard 2, and that the proposed work is compatible in size, proportion, and materials with the historic resource, and does not destroy historic materials, features, or spatial relationships that characterize the resource per Standard 9. Under Chapter 24A8, the criteria for issuance, staff finds that since the proposal does not alter or remove historic materials, damage or modify character-defining features or massing of the property, and is located towards the rear on secondary elevations, it does not substantially alter the exterior features of the resource per Chapter 24A8B1, and that the proposed windows and skylight are compatible with the historic and architectural features of the resource and district in size, proportion, materials, and details in the locations proposed per Chapter 24A8B2. So with those, I'm kind of summarizing those. And so with those findings, staff recommends the commission approve the HOP application under criteria for issuance in Chapter 24A8B1 and 2, having found that the proposal will not substantially alter the exterior features of the historic resource and is compatible in character with the purposes of Chapter 24A, the Tacoma Park Historic District Guidelines, and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation number 2 and 9. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I have a question. Did I understand correctly that there were originally 2 windows to that rear kitchen area?
Yes, it does appear so, and I had to do a little digging to find those since they were buried in previous hops and in kind of bad scans of copies. So here you can see that there were 2 windows on that location, roughly where they're proposed now.
When were those added and removed, I guess?
I'm not entirely sure. Let me go back to so in the 1994 drawings, there is no side elevation since all they were doing at that time was modifications to the rear. In the 1999 drawings, it just shows 1 window, and the same in the 2005 work, but I'm not able to determine when that was actually covered over.
Okay, thank you. Are there any, Commissioner Doman?
The picture that you had of the interior of the kitchen, is that currently like that, or when was that picture taken?
I will let the applicant, this is from the applicant, so I'm not sure when it dates to, but presumably currently.
Okay, thanks.
Oops, if there are no more questions for staff, then I will call the applicant forward, and the applicant is Eric Saul, who is the architect for this project, I understand. If you'll please sit down and turn on the mic, and for the record, give your name and your relationship to this project.
Hi, Eric Saul. I'm the architect for the client, or the homeowner.
You can make any presentation you like, or you can just answer our questions.
I don't really have much to say. This was on the consent list. We had a neighbor concern. That's the only reason I'm here. Hopefully, all the information's been shown that these two windows that the neighbor seemed most concerned about were already there. I think his opposition letter was wrong, and he said they weren't there, but we have photo evidence, so I'm just hoping that we can approve this. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, do you have any idea if the windows are still buried in the wall, or were they removed?
Yeah, one window I think is, so that photo was taken a while ago. There was a renovation when the kitchen was done years ago. I was trying to text the client really quick to see if they had the answer for me, but if I were to say 10 years at least, that's probably accurate.
Thank you. You don't often see windows buried in the framing of the house and just left, but are there any other questions for the applicant? If not, then we have another person to testify, Robert Engelhardt, to come forward, if you would, please. Again, sit down in front of a mic, turn it on so it's green, and then identify yourself by name and your relationship to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Robert Engelhardt. I'm the owner of 7217 Cedar Avenue. I adjoin 7221 Cedar Avenue on the south side, and I have submitted an opposition to the two windows that are to be created on the south side of the property. I'd like to begin by just saying I think we appreciate the privilege of both owning contributing resources in Tacoma Park Historic District, whether it's the preservation of the architecture, the canopy of the trees, or the tax credits that are extended to us. We all know that the value of our property is increased because we are members of the historic Tacoma Park District. Having said that, it comes with responsibilities, and the responsibilities include restrictions, and we know that, on certain changes to our residences. In the staff report, it indicates that adding new windows openings on rear or other secondary, less visible elevations are approved if required by a new use. I have emphasized in my opposition that there has been no proffer of a new use of the space inside this house. It's a kitchen area currently, and it's going to be a kitchen area after this. And so there is no new use that dictates these new windows. We're talking about a 12-foot section of the side that we're now told is new, not historic, and it is attached in an undifferentiated way from the historic portion, which is probably about 24 feet in the front. Currently, all the windows on that south side are in the historic section. So in this section of 12 feet that is new, there are no windows. And in many ways, that emphasizes the historic nature of the property because it brings one's focus to the portion that is historic. There are no features, no alterations currently in that new section. If two new windows were added, it would increase the amount of windows on that side of the house by 66%. So we're in the fortunate position of being able to keep the spatial relationship and the spaces and the features on the historic portion of that house by not crafting and not opening up two new windows in this 12-foot new addition in the back. Turning to the other point that the staff mentions, that this is not truly visible. I think that relies on the fact that it would be directly visible but for shrubbery and vegetation. And I think that the requirement that we not consider shrubbery and vegetation as a legal basis for saying something's not visible. If this side of the house were deemed not sufficiently visible, we would be down to just concluding that the only visible part was the front of the house. This is as visible as anything on the side, and both sides are visible from the street. So I'm concerned about those two windows specifically, and I want to emphasize that under Rehabilitation Standard 2 of the Department of the Interior, alteration of features, spaces, or spatial relationships that characterize a property will be avoided, and that's what the introduction of these two windows will do, alter those spatial relationships, and they are not dictated by the rehabilitation requirement that requires a new use before adding new windows to rear or other secondary, less visible elevations.
Are there any questions for this speaker? No? I have a question. In your letter, you commented that part of the problem you have with this is your loss of privacy because the windows will be looking in your main portion of your house, but your windows are quite a bit higher than these windows will be.
I don't believe that's true.
They won't be on the same level.
I don't believe that's true.
I've been out to the property, and from the curb at least, it looks as if the bottom of your windows will be either at the top of the new windows or at least halfway down.
Well, looking from my windows or looking from the proposed new windows, we'll be able to see each other standing there.
That is true. That is one of the conditions that happens when you have houses in close proximity to each other, like in an older neighborhood.
So I understand your point that my windows might be slightly higher, but only slightly, so that the view that we share will be mutual and we will see each other.
Understood. Commissioner Doman?
I guess the question is that to both of the one picture that showed the inside of the kitchen when it was the walls are opened up and everything, it actually showed two windows there. Is that how I see it? And this is this picture right here. So does that tell me that at one time there were actually two windows in that wall? Is that correct?
That's correct. There's one physical window still in the wall. I don't know why they put plywood in one opening. We can see the framing of the opening of both windows.
But many years ago, there were two windows there.
Correct.
And your proposal is to put two windows in there?
Correct.
Okay, I understand.
This is Chair Burdett. And those two, I'm just trying to get my head around the construction of this area, of the portion of the house. There was a shed portion before the second floor was added. So historically, that shed portion was out there after 1927, but, I mean, looking at the picture right now on the screen, when was that added to the house?
This is Laura with the staff. My best estimation is, again, just post-1927. Unfortunately, the Sanborn maps for this area, I was only able to find the 1927 one. The following Kling atlases, the first one is in 1931. It shows a rectangle with a front porch, but those atlases are slightly less detailed than the Sanborns were. But here, you know, the dashed line indicates an open porch, 1 story. You know, it shows that it's set in from the side elevation. So my best estimation is between the 30s and 50s for this
the
addition.
extension of that shed to go out to a
Right,
line?
and the enclosure.
So the 94 addition just added a second floor to that?
99, they added
Second
this
floor.
Second floor.
If you could go back to that previous photograph. So that photograph is 1999.
This one. Mhm.
That one is, okay, so the second floor hasn't been added.
Correct. Yeah,
And
this
the-
is from that application for that
Yeah.
addition.
And there are clearly 2 windows there.
And you can see the sills, they're in shadow, but you can see 2 sills in shadow here also. Just-
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions? Because if not, we're going to have our deliberation on this case. Unless, no, okay, we're going to have our deliberations. Would anybody like to start? Commissioner Haynes.
So this property is a contributing resource to the Tacoma Park Historic District. And in the guidelines, it states the design review emphasis will be restricted to changes that are at all visible from the public right-of-way, irrespective of landscape or vegetation, which you noted. It is expected that the majority of new additions will be reviewed for the impact on the overall district. What I interpret that to mean is just because it's visible from the right-of-way, it needs to be reviewed on its impact on the overall streetscape, the character, if it influences the character of the neighborhood, the streetscape, architectural features of the house, perhaps. And I find that these particular 2 windows, and I too was out at the site this morning, have very little impact on the street. Yes, you'll see it if all your trees and vegetation were cut down. Yeah, you would see them, but the distance from the street to these windows, and they're partially blocked by that small projecting entry, really don't have an impact. They'll hardly be noticed by anybody walking down the street. I find that they are in scale and proportion to other windows on the historic portion of the house. And as we've just seen from the photographs, there were 2 windows there at one time. So
May I note for the record that the statement that there were 2 windows there at one time is first being introduced tonight? That has never been mentioned in any report to me or to the commission.
Well, you've seen the evidence. So I find that the windows do meet the spirit of the Tacoma Park guidelines. I think that they are in character with the house in terms of their trim work, sill, divided light, and therefore I support it in that I don't feel it has any degradation of the streetscape, the character of the neighborhood, and that's my thoughts.
Are there any other comments anybody would like to make? No? Commissioner Nasser, do you have any comments? I keep forgetting that you're there.
Just briefly, this is Commissioner Nasser. I agree with Commissioner, oh my God, I forgot your last name. Commissioner Haynes. And yeah, we see the evidence. There were 2 windows there. I agree with you. They don't impact the character of the neighborhood. And we all see our neighbors from our windows. We are most of us living in houses that you can actually see our neighbors. I don't see it as a downside. So yeah, I agree with you. I would support it.
This is Chair Burdett. I concur with both Commissioner Haynes and Commissioner Nasser. The additions to this house and the fenestration changes are in keeping with the scale and the historic nature of the house. They do not, drawing a blank all of a sudden. They are perfectly appropriate for the house, and with the community and with the neighborhood. I see no issue with it, and I support this application on this property. We use the guidelines as what they are, which are guidelines in our determinations. But also, one of the issues is we are not to deprive the owners of the property of the fair use of their property. And frankly, changing out some windows and returning to windows at that location, to deny them that would be an unfair imposition on their ownership, in my personal opinion. So I would like a motion on this case, Commissioner Haynes. If anybody else would like to do it, that can.
I move that the HPC approve HOP number 1122762 at 7221 Cedar Avenue, Tacoma Park, based on the staff report and their recommendations.
This is Chair Burdett. I second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. There are no nays, there are no abstentions. This HOP is approved. And thank you, that you can talk to the staff about what comes next. And thank you for coming forward. We always welcome all comments in this meeting, and we appreciate that you've come tonight. Thank you. Moving forward, item 2F at 10012 Menlo Avenue, Silver Spring. Is there a staff report?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Dan Bruckert for the record. This is a retroactive HOP at 10012 Menlo Avenue in Silver Spring. So this is a nominal resource, which for the district is post-1935 within the Capitol View Park Historic District. The house itself was constructed circa 1946, and this is to be reviewed under Chapter 24A, the adopted Capitol View Park Master Plan Amendment and the Secretary of the Interior Standards for rehabilitation. Just to familiarize yourself with the block that it's on, it's surrounded by largely non-contributing resources. As you get to the north, we do have a 1923, a 1906, and an 1890 house, but none of those are in the direct view shed. So working backwards, the HPC approved a HOP on December 4th, 2024, to demolish the roof, rear wall of the existing house and construct a second floor and expand the rear of the house further to the rear. On May 28th this year, the HPC considered a retroactive HOP for a change in siding, and during the hearing, the HPC identified several alterations to the approved plan. The HOP was deferred until more information can be reviewed, including accurately presented as-built drawings identifying all of the new fenestration changes. So again, this was the house pre-HOP, cement stucco sided, one story, some colonial revival elements, a 1950s garage that had been converted to interior space on the right. So the applicant seeks retroactive approval for altering the fenestration on all four elevations and altering the siding from the approved material and configuration, and seeks the HPC's prospective approval to install bracket-supported roofs in several locations. And again, these have not been installed yet. So again, this is the house in its current form. See the left side, which is the left and the front are the most highly visible. This is the right of the front here, you can see. And then the right wall has limited view because of the height and setback and proximity of the house to the north. So we're going to work through fenestration and bracket alterations first. This is the front elevation. You see proposed bracket-supported roofs on the left and the right. You see, instead of the approved 3 windows, 4 were installed on the second floor. The approved door had skylight that was removed. On the left elevation, a number of the window assemblies were either relocated or, in the case of the 2 towards the front, we have shed roofs to be installed as sort of hoods over the windows, and then you see the bracket-supported roof over the left inset in the house. In the rear, where there was originally a tripart door, we now have 2 paired door openings. Window assembly turned into a double casement. A single casement was added in the upper left corner of the second story, and then a multi-light window assembly was installed in the lower left. And then a couple of windows were eliminated on the right elevation. It looks like the window on the second floor all the way to the left here was it appears to be skinnier, not as wide as what was originally approved. Depending, that could be just a rendering issue, or it could actually be narrower. And then again, you see the 2 bracket-supported roofs for the 2 insets on the front elevation. The approved design also included preserving the existing cement stucco siding on the original portion of the house, installing vertical V-joint cedar in the first floor recesses, that was both the left and the right one, and installing fiber cement panels with vertically cocked joints and flashing at the horizontals. These are the approved siding materials. You see examples of the cocked joints with flashing at the horizontals, and then the cedar was to be installed vertically rather than horizontally. So during construction, the applicant installed a rain screen as part of the construction, which altered the overhang and the ability to install or express the stucco as originally proposed. And this is the result as we get sort of it's hardy trim pieces. It's a 1x3. If this were all vertical, it would be board and batten, but it may just be considered battens. At the front, the commissioners pointed out that the sort of central form doesn't align with it aligns with the top of the window, but it doesn't align with the rest of the siding on the first floor. And then again, I'm sorry to go back. Again, this space was supposed to be expressed cement stucco siding. We're supposed to have vertical cedar planks installed here and here. On the left side, we have different expressed first floor, except the treatment was applied throughout the entirety of the left elevation. And then on the less visible sides, again, we have a different treatment on the first floor than the second. So staff's findings as it relates to the fenestration alterations, we find that they don't have a substantial impact on the overall character or compatibility of the building. The original approved window placement lacked a formal arrangement and was going for a sort of contemporary design using many of the openings on the existing first floor. Staff finds that the projecting bay and small shed roof on the right elevation do not disrupt the overall massing of the approved design and are on an elevation that has limited visibility due to the setback of the neighboring house. However, staff does not find that the proposed shed roofs over the 2 paired windows on the left elevation are a compatible feature. Staff does not find that the proposed siding treatment is typical of a historic district and finds the treatment more consistent with commercial or apartment buildings, and finds that the applied grids disrupt the flatness of the approved design. Staff finds that the removal of the vertical siding on the 2 front recesses eliminates an additional material variety, resulting in a monolithic uniform appearance, and staff finds that the misaligned trim at the front of the house draws additional visual attention to the siding treatment. Staff finds that eliminating the cement stucco siding eliminated a strong horizontal element that helped to break up the highly visible elevation's massing and notes that, traditional architecture would often apply a bandboard to break up a single plane, just to make the massing appear a little less massive. So staff actually has two recommendations. It's a recommendation for approval in part and denial in part. Staff recommends that the HPC approve the HOP for the fenestration alterations under 24A8, B2, and D, standards 2, 9, and 10, with the added condition that detailed specification sheets with dimensions must be submitted for the new windows, and dimensions and specifications for the proposed roof brackets must be keyed on revised elevation drawings. The rendered bay window projection must be removed from the left elevation and are not approved, with final authority to verify these details have been satisfied, delegated to staff. And additionally, staff includes as part of that condition that no final inspections of the property will be approved until this condition is satisfied and the HOP document issued. And that the HPC deny the siding revision HOP under 24A8 in violation of 24A8B2 and D. Alternatively, and this was laid out in the staff report, if the HPC determines that the revised siding is acceptable, as it does not alter the size, scale, and massing of the proposal, staff recommends that the HPC add two conditions. That one, requires the application of a traditional stucco finish to the entirety of the first floor, and two, that the central panels be removed and reconstructed to align with the front elevation on both the first and the second floors. And with that, I will answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions for staff? This is Chair Burdett. All of these changes were made without informing staff, correct?
Correct.
And typically, the HPC would have been informed, you would have been informed of all of these changes and would have brought either done an automatic consent if that was approved, and if not, it would have come before us before the work was installed, correct?
Correct. Just to take a step back, Madam Chair, the applicant did reach out to the staff in April 2025 and presented a couple alternative treatment options. Mm-hmm. The vertical batten treatment was the one that staff said was likely the most compatible, but identified that any change required a HOP. Mm-hmm. So the applicant did run them by staff. We did not do a full analysis and in that, but we rejected the other proposals out of hand, and the applicant followed up based on that. The treatment before you is not the treatment that was presented to staff for its cursory initial review before submission.
Yes.
Just to provide you,
yeah.
So yes,
yeah.
there was some communication between the applicant and staff before submission, but staff notes that what has been installed is not what was initially provided to staff for an evaluation.
Understood completely. Commissioner Pelletier.
This is Commissioner Pelletier. Is there any of the original house left?
So there is the front wall, the recess here, and then the first floor on the left remain. Sorry, let me bring, so you can see we have cement stucco siding here underneath.
I see, okay.
And then there's a portion of the front of the garage. There are two small sections of wall that were retained as well. The remainder of the house was demolished.
Okay, and as far as the nominal resource, what is that equivalent to a non-contributing resource?
Yes. So the nominal resources. Here, let me pull this out. So nominal resources. This is from the Capital View Vicinity and Sector Plan. It says nominal resources, and again, these are identified just by date of construction, not by any other characteristics.
Right.
It says these houses of themselves are of no architectural or historical significance, but through their contiguity to the significant resources have some interest in the historic district.
Okay.
So I think it's more about adding to the streetscape and just the overall construction of the district. But as staff noted in the initial slide here, that this whole area of the district was constructed sort of post-World War II. So none of these resources, aside from again, the three at the north end of the block, are identified as one of the two contributing periods of construction within the district.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for staff? If not, I will ask the applicant to come forward. Mr. Salem Badaway? And if you'll turn on the mic and identify yourself and your relationship to this project for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Salim Badawi. I'm the owner of the house on 10012 Menlo Avenue.
You can make whatever presentation or explanation that you'd like to make about the situation now.
Okay. So as discussed last time, the plan was to install fiber cement hardy panels with caulking in between the joints between the panels. And as mentioned before, when I spoke to contractors, none of them seemed aware of that product, the Stucco hardy panels, and I couldn't even find them. Okay, and you can do your research on Home Depot, Lowe's, ABC Supply, none was carrying them. The other main concern was the fact that, or what the contractor said, is that if you caulk between the panels, and this is a new house, we're doing an addition, but it's almost a new house. The house is going to settle, and all the caulking is going to crack, and you will have to reapply the caulking again. And that for me was the biggest issue, because I don't wanna leave the new homeowner with something like that. So I reached out to them, presented a couple of options. One with that the regular board and batten, which is like spaced, like the battens are spaced like 15-inch, and the one that I installed, which is like on the joints between the panels, which is like spaced at every 4 feet. Dan briefly said I think the one that is spaced at 4 feet looks more appropriate given the contemporary design of the house. And yes, he said that I have time to think about it, before I come back for a hop. I thought that the fact that he said, or he gave me a favorable opinion towards one of them is a yes. And based on that, I proceeded. Of course, I was under time pressure from, like we discussed before that, like the original hub took 5 months to approve. That added financial stress to me and to the project. But the fact is, like I reached out and consulted before I do the alteration. So if we go to if we look at the alteration, I presented as well many precedented houses like this. Treatment is not unprecedented. Like in my neighborhood, I live in North Kensington. There are like 4 houses that have contemporary design, and they have this siding treatment. So that's not something new. And it is the house, whether we kept it flat or with like the caulking in between, or using metal reveals between the panels, or using this form of, let's say, board and batten, the house style or design remains the same. It's a contemporary house, regardless. So I'm going to focus on the most, on the largest concern of the staff, which is the left side elevation of the house. I believe that the front side, we're gonna break it up by adding two roofs over the porches. And we're gonna rearrange the panels as recommended by the staff. And the central panels as well gonna receive a different paint color. So that should break up the front elevation. It's already broken up given that one side is depressed or pushed back, but the left side will be further broken up by adding the roof over the porch and the different paint color. Dan, did you start the presentation? All right, thank you. Thanks. So if we go to the third slide with the front elevation. So here we go. Yeah, front elevation. So here we go. The proposal is to add two roofs and brackets over the two porches and apply different paint color. Understand that paint color is not or is not restricted or doesn't need to be addressed by the HPC, but that's part. I'm trying to show it like the plan with the front elevation. For the rear elevation and the side, you can see that we added a bay window. There was a window, but there wasn't a base structure. And what happened, this was completely unplanned. What happened is that because we have 10-foot ceiling on the main floor, we had an issue with the staircase. Because of the height, if we are to get the right slope and by code and the right height for the risers and the depth of the treads, we would have gone into the hallway by like 1 foot. So after a lot of deliberations with the contractor, it seemed like the most plausible and the most plausible option would be to push that wall, which is behind this wall is the landing of the staircase. So we had two issues. We had a small landing which wasn't meeting the code, and in order for us to address this issue, we had one of two options: either to push the staircase into the hallway, which was something that I didn't like at all, and the second, which eventually we came up with, was to push that wall by 8 inches. So that's what we did. And that, of course, was going to be addressed by an amendment anyway, with the historic and the DPS. However, as you can see, the benefit of this bay structure is that it broke up this large wall. Like if you stand in front of the house, you wouldn't be able to see the back of the wall because of that bay window. I understand that the staff doesn't have an issue with this one.
Sir, your time is up.
Okay.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Haynes.
Can we go to the front elevation? My first question is, why are you adding the two little shed roofs to the porches?
Okay. if you look closely, you will see that the plane of the wall, how can I say, the header is pushed back on both sides, and they look awkward. And the reason they are pushed back, one of them is actually the concrete contractor made a mistake, and he put the footing 8-inch inside from where they were supposed to be. And because of that, we have the poles where, like the posts, the 6x6 posts where they are, and it led to that awkward look where we have the header is pushed back from the plane of the wall. On the other side, it's just 2 inches, and that's because of the exterior insulation and the rain screen.
And on this front elevation, that gray section, what, are you proposing a change of material there?
No,
What does that mean?
just a different color.
I'm sorry?
This is just a different color, different paint color.
Just a different paint color. But is the batten pattern the same as the photograph? You're just going to paint that whole?
No, we are going to rearrange the central panels to be the same as in the drawing.
Okay, I see.
So we're gonna add the bonding beam, which is like 8-inch beam, and we're gonna remove the trim work under the 2 windows.
You're going to have more caulk joints. And then I guess my other question is, why the differentiation from in terms of the windows, and the organization of the windows from the approved set to the construction?
Yeah, as I mentioned the last time, the fact that we had 3 windows spaced apart, it didn't give me the natural light, or like the picture of the outside picture. And I'm a big fan of bringing the outside inside.
Well, why didn't you propose that initially?
That was a decision that was taken swiftly, and I didn't even think about it in
Did you
terms
hire
of
an architect
HPC.
to help you with this?
What is that?
Did you hire a design professional to help you with this, the design of the house?
Well, I reached out to the architect and we discussed it. Yeah.
Thank you.
But and I proposed as well. If you look on the left section, I proposed to the architect as well, or we discussed whether we should add an extra window. You see, there is one single window on the bottom, or on the lower floor, and he said. So I thought, like, maybe we need to add another one so that we keep it symmetrical with the 2 above them. But he said this is a contemporary house where you don't have to abide by like formal arrangement. And there is a door, an interior door behind it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Sort of following up about the shed roofs, why are you doing the 2 on the side over the windows?
Okay, if we can move then to the, okay. So this wall seems to be like the largest concern, like the most concerning issue. The fact that we have a large mass or large wall that is uninterrupted. So that is my proposal, that if we add these 2 shed roofs and do trim work and different paint color around these 2 paired windows, that will break up this large wall. That is my suggestion.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I think, I'm just looking at the photo, it's a contemporary house. I mean, if it was on the south side, I might understand if you were kind of shading some of the windows, but I guess I disagree. I don't think it really needs anything on that side. My other question is on the front. Can we go back to the front? Are you going to, on that horizontal that's separating the second floor from the first floor, you're widening that band, right?
Excuse me?
You're going to widen that?
Yeah, yes, we're gonna install a beam or like 1x8.
Like a 1x8 or
Yeah,
something like
1x8,
that?
yes.
So that's going to go straight across?
Absolutely.
So you're going to, so all that's going to line
Yeah,
up?
no,
Okay.
it looks awkward now, and that wasn't the plan. So what we're
Okay.
gonna install is what you see on the
And you're
on the elevation
gonna,
now.
so are you, on the two upper windows, you're gonna get rid of that cross piece? Are you gonna bring the battens down to the fatter horizontal?
So the two other windows on the second floor, correct?
Yeah, with the little panels
We're gonna
below
remove
them.
that. We're gonna remove that.
But, so what will it end up being? Will it be like 4 battens across there? Like going all the way down to your horizontal? Like, because you got to have some seams in there, and all your other seams are battens. So I'm just curious what the pattern, when you're done, when you take off that sort of out-of-place horizontal piece, if those verticals are just going to come straight down to the band below. I'm thrilled that you're putting in the band, by the way, because it's driving me crazy that those things don't line up. So I'm encouraging of that. I would just like to see, since you have the battens everywhere else, I wouldn't do like a cock joint there, which you don't want to do anyway. But I'm just questioning, you have 2 battens on either side of the window, if they would just come straight down and hit that long piece, that long horizontal. And I just can't really tell what's going on in your elevation. So I would encourage you to do that.
So what we did, or what we are planning to do, what we did on the left side of that single window is that we installed another panel on top of it so that to avoid having that seam. So we in that empty space on the left side of that window, it is like double siding. Or we have 2 panels on top of each other to avoid having that seam. Which is what I'm gonna do above that window as well, or between the 2 windows and the single window, to avoid having seams at all that I need to caulk.
Okay.
And
Not
that
sure I
wouldn't be seen because it's inside the trim work anyways.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand, but if it's shown in a drawing somewhere, I'll figure it out. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Any other questions? Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, what has happened from the last time you were here to tonight's presentation? It's been, what, a couple weeks, or I was trying to think when you were here last.
No, it's almost 2 months, right? Almost May 28th, 2 months. Almost.
Yes, but remember that this HOP had to be submitted 3 weeks before tonight's meeting. So it was basically like 3.5 weeks from following up from the last meeting until his submission.
No.
So there's been some time, but he also had to submit substantially before this meeting so we could get the staff report written and that notice and do all the other things that we're required to do as part of every HOP.
Yeah, so you're sitting on a house that's, I assume you're working on the interior, is that correct?
Of course, yeah.
Because the outside is of concern to us from the neighborhood point of view. The inside is, and you have the windows to go along with your footprint, the floor layout, your plan, so everything, you really can't move any windows, basically, because things are already laid out for you, right?
I mean, there are no more changes to the windows.
There are no more?
No.
Okay, and I think the staff has bought off on the window placements. And I have to go back again, I know I asked this question before, but it just seems strange that you're using these panels and the manufacturer says to caulk them, why didn't you just caulk them? I don't understand. I mean, you said, well, because it could move and all that, and none of you contractors wanted to do it. But there must be historical records from the manufacturer. This is what, Hardy Plank, is that what this is, or Hardy?
Okay.
I mean, they must have a history of doing seam together vertically, and there should be an experience that says, yes, you can do this. I'm wondering why the contractor didn't go back to the manufacturer. Why didn't you go the way it would have been designed by the manufacturer of these panels? It just seems strange.
I wish I did that, okay? But here, again, first of all, it's a new product. It's not like a product that has been there for a while. It is a new product. None of the siding contractors I met was familiar with it, and the whole idea was based on the plan that we were going to keep the existing stucco, okay? The existing stock. However, it turned out to be awkward anyway. Because we demolished the right side of the right side of the house. This right side of the front elevation was demolished because it turned out that it didn't have footing. And on the other side, we added a rear addition. So imagine we were going to just leave part of the front and the part of the left side. So it was going to look awkward. Like there was no benefit at all of keeping the stucco. It wasn't going to look good. And because of the 2-inch exterior insulation and the rain screen that went on top of the stucco as well. So the whole plan was based on keeping the stucco. And then it turned out that we can't keep the stucco, okay? Then I couldn't even find the stucco Hardy panels. I couldn't find them. I could, like, if you type right now on Google right now, you wouldn't find out of stock on Lowe's, and that was like 1 month before I started the siding work. Home Depot as well, out of stock. Up until this day, up until this moment, it's out of stock. So I couldn't even find it. I wish I was able to find it and just to caulk between the panels, because that would have been even cheaper for me. Just simply caulk between the panels, as simple as that. And that is only recommended with the stucco panels. So what I ended up installing is the regular Hardy panels, not the stucco panels, because I couldn't find them. Does that clarify the situation?
Yeah.
So these panels are not a stucco that have the caulking treatment as a recommended treatment by the manufacturer. These are regular fiber cement.
So what you're saying, these panels that you actually are using, that are actually installed in the house, are not the ones you intended to use because you were looking for stucco panels and you couldn't find stucco panels, right?
Correct.
And the stucco panels would have held up better on the caulk, but since you don't have those, you opted to put the battens over the top of everything,
Exactly.
right?
And with the concern, of course, that like if the caulking dries out between the stucco panels, that's normal. I would say that's normal because that's in the traditional stucco. You see the cracking. All stucco ends up cracking anyway. But that would have been maybe it would have been okay with the stucco panels.
Well, the one thing I like is you put a rain screen in.
I tried to.
I
I
thought
tried
that
to follow
was-
the code and do do the right thing.
And you got one under, basically what I see here in this picture is the way the house looks right now, right?
Mhm.
And we've offered you some suggestions, and you've offered in these proposed elevations some changes to the way I guess the front elevation could change a little bit. Okay, so you've already got this thing enclosed, the roof is on. One question I have, and it goes back to the right side elevation. And it goes back, I guess it's on page 19, but it's called the right side elevation. And is that a bump out that I'm looking at, or what is that that's on the right side elevation?
Yeah, that's, yeah, the bay,
I mean, it's this one here, you got it, it's like it's darker.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
8-inch,
Where?
yeah, it's a bay window.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, and the reason it comes out, okay, I didn't see that. It blends in very good. Okay, and the reason you had to do is because of the stairs, is what you're saying?
Yeah, because we had a
You had to
very
bump this
narrow-
out.
Yeah, very narrow
Okay.
landing that didn't meet the code.
Okay. All right, those are my questions then. Thank you.
Okay, this is Chair Burdett. Well, where to start with this? I'm going to start with an easy one first, but how did you get these drawings through permit with a stair that did not comply with code?
Can you repeat again the question, please?
You submitted these drawings in for a building permit, and the stair was not compliant to code. How did that happen?
How was it?
How did you get
How
a-
it wasn't complied?
It obviously, if you're bumping it out,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't complying, there wasn't enough room.
Oh, no, they didn't look at that.
They didn't look at that.
Even the floor plan didn't address that issue.
Oh, you mean the floor plan
Yeah.
didn't properly represent the stair when you submitted it for permit?
I don't think any floor plan would even show that.
Oh, I beg to differ on that. The county is very particular about its staircases in residential properties. They are required to comply with code, and they will measure it on the drawings, and they will measure it in the field very carefully. And I know this because of my house. All right?
That wasn't the case. I'm sorry, that wasn't the case. The landing wasn't on the floor plan, and it wasn't flagged by the county.
It wasn't on the floor plan.
It wasn't on the floor plan. I mean, I submitted the floor plan.
And it wasn't flagged because your drawings did not properly represent what was the plan for the house. Okay, let's step back. When you were here in December and explaining what you wanted to do with this existing house and how you wanted to pop it up and leave, and we told you you had to leave the stucco and the panels would be above it, and we talked all through that. Since then, well, you have now, this is the second time since then you've been before us, and this is still changing. You are still making changes to this building, this house, even though we haven't yet approved the changes you made last time. And I want to make a point to you, is that we talked to you about what we wanted to see, and you agreed with us, and you were supposed to do that. You did not. That's why you were here in April. The HPC has before, on multiple occasions with multiple applicants, made them remove everything they did that did not comply with the approved original plan. Okay? That is a possibility. Now, it's disturbing to me that after the last meeting in April, when we're sitting here looking at, trying to figure out what was going on with your elevations, and we saw images that showed that you had actually proceeded past that point and had continued work past that point to a point where your building was actually further along, that we had to stop the meeting because there was nothing that we could actually deal with because it wasn't even evaluated by staff. And here you are back again, making more changes and showing more as-built conditions that do not comply with either the December plans or the April plans, and you want us to approve them because, well, that's what I wanted to do, and that's where we got, and this mistake was made, and that mistake was made, and I couldn't get materials, and you have all of these continuing explanations and excuses. And this is still a moving target. And this is not the way this works.
I'm respectfully waiting for you to, to finish so that I can
No,
respond.
then you can still wait, because I'm not done yet. okay? That is not how this works here. When it's a property in a historic district, we determine and we advise you on what you will do. And you come back with a HOP that accurately represents what you are going to do. We approve it, and then you do what you say you're going to do. You do not make changes without letting the staff know. You do not build those changes without letting the staff know, and you certainly don't draw plans and show them to us when that's not what you're going to do or when you have no idea if it's going to work. And you certainly don't go in front of the go to get a permit when your drawings do not represent what you built or are building. I mean, this is not how it works in the county, and it's not how it works here. And I'll give you a tip, a bit of advice from the architectural profession. When you start messing with your design too much, you go too far, you just continually change it, trying to fix this and fix that, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that. You go too far, and you make a mess. And you never do that. That's what they teach us in school as architects. Don't keep doing it. Stop yourself and have a good hard look at your plans and have a good hard talk with yourself about this is not a good idea if I have to keep making changes and keep fixing it, and the fixes are no better than what I did before. So the stucco is gone, that was representational on the bottom. You ran a rain screen over it without telling anybody. You're telling us that you had to do that because, well, this part got demolished and that part got demolished, except you knew going in what was going to happen, and you could have come to staff and said, I have this issue, and I need some advice. And you didn't. And now we're at a point where you've got this mess of this building that doesn't look anything like the original house, doesn't look anything like what you showed us in December. It doesn't even look like what you showed us in April. And you're still wanting us to okay it. And I mean, is this the first time you've ever done this?
Yes.
It shows. Okay? And I would have a lot of questions for the architect who worked with you, because they should be doing a better job than what the advice they've been giving you. So I'm not going to go into all the things I think are wrong with this, because there is so much. And I was going to tell you you should look at another system if you can't get hold of the one you wanted to use. There are other manufacturers out there you can use, but obviously you have thrown out that idea because you say, well, it's not available, even though I'm not sure you've done your research. So I'm going to ask staff to please explain in detail your recommendations from your report on what we approve and what we don't approve.
Now I have to respond to what you mentioned, that I kept going after April. Can you show me where I kept going after April?
Well, the rain screen for one, because when we saw
What is rain screen? I came here after I completed the siding, after I installed all the hardy panels. So what rain screen? That rain screen was completed before I came here in April. So I'm sorry, what you said that I kept going after April, that is entirely incorrect. Entirely incorrect. And if I go back to what you mentioned, that I had to keep the stucco, no, I didn't have to keep the stucco, and I wasn't told to keep the stucco. It was my proposal to keep the stucco. I was never told that I had to keep the stucco. Okay? And if let's talk about keeping the stucco. It bypassed us, or we overlooked the fact that it would have looked awkward that we keep the front and the part of the left side. It bypassed us, or like we overlooked that, and it same thing. It wasn't caught by the staff as well. Then if you go back, can you show us the picture, please, with the stucco and the rain screen? Yes.
So
who like, there are some parts that you couldn't foresee. okay? There are some parts that you couldn't foresee. And this would have been looking very
that's-
awkward if it was kept like that.
That's when you come back and let us
Okay,
know.
when we did the structure, the engineer did the structural engineer did the inspection, and we found no footing. And they had to put a complete new foundation for the right side. Is it something like I did intentionally, or it's a
but-
situation that I had to deal with? I had no idea that side had that was a garage before, and it had no footings. So, I mean, like, I'm sorry, but because you're coming motivated, okay, and as if like I'm doing that intentionally, absolutely not. And when I wanted to do any changes, I reached out to Dan. And because he gave me favorable opinion, I thought that was going to be approved by the HPC. So I'm sorry, I don't appreciate the fact that you are accusing me of doing this and that. No, on the inside, I did far more changes that weren't planned, because like every day you face an issue. Every day a contractor come up with a situation that we have to deal with. So I'm sorry, I don't appreciate the way you are talking to me.
Dan?
And if you are frustrated with me with one thing, I'm frustrated with the HPC. I appreciate what you guys are doing and the cause of the historic. It's very important to preserve the historic properties, because they have, that's part of people's culture and the heritage. I completely appreciate what you're doing. However, when the commission or the guidelines say that this house is insignificant, it doesn't have a historic significance, okay, then I would expect a leniency, not 5 months to take the permit, to get the permit. The building permit itself, it took 1 month. Here it took 5 months. That 5 months costed me over $30,000 just waiting. Let me, the windows. I was told that I had to install aluminum clad windows, and I complied with that. However, the original house didn't have a single aluminum or wood clad or wood window.
No, they would have had steel windows and they would have been single
No,
glazed.
it was all vinyl. It was all vinyl.
Then they got replaced.
None. I have videos while we were doing the demolition. Okay, none of the windows were aluminum or wood. None. And how much did that cost me to install aluminum clad windows? Over $20,000, because these are very expensive windows over like in comparison with the vinyl windows. And I complied. So I'm sorry, like I'm doing my best to comply with the regulations, but like there are situations that just come up and you have to deal with them.
But that's the problem, and that is the requirements of doing work in a historic district. You have to comply,
it's a big mistake.
and you have to come forward between us. Even when a house is a non-contributing resource, you have to come forward to us and the staff. And the staff regularly approves on their approval many things that never come before us, because they have the right to approve it all the time.
When I reached out to Dan, when I knew that I can't find the stucco hardy panels, and the contractor said the caulking will crack and all of that, I reached out to Dan. I sought permission, and I want to say something. Like when I first heard about the HPC, the employee on the second floor here told me, with the HPC, you ask for permission, you don't ask for forgiveness. And it was a golden advice that that I'm happy, but apparently didn't save me. It's still because
you're still
because I reached out to them to get a permission, and it's still it still haunts me.
It isn't permission given just because you want it. It's permission because you comply. And you're asking for forgiveness now because you didn't comply.
I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for, I reached out to Dan for permission.
So,
And not just a permission, I presented him with the situation, and I told him, here are a couple of choices. What do you think? Yes, I understand that he didn't do a thorough analysis, but I did my best to reach out and ask.
Sir, I would say that in December, we approved the boards with the caulk, and even in April, we approved the battens,
No, you didn't approve the patents in April.
didn't we?
No, Madam Chair. In May, when the HPC met,
May.
part of the reason for
that's
the
right.
the deferral was that you had identified, or the commissioners had identified several changes, primarily to the fenestration.
That's correct.
And the request was for as-built drawings that accurately reflected the building because we were still working off of the December 2024 approval.
That is correct. I stand corrected that we never reached any conclusion in our last meeting. Now, you are showing us a bay pump out to accommodate a stair. You are showing us a reconfiguration of the battens and color added. What color?
The color is not part of the hub, and
That's right.
it is not regulated
Okay.
by the
Okay.
HPC.
So, all right, we cannot comment on color choices.
As for the bay window, the staff, they don't have a problem with it, and there is actually a benefit. It turned out that it has a benefit because it broke up the big wall on that side. And that's what I'm proposing on the left side as well, because it seems like this big wall has, it's a big mess, and it needs to be broken up. And from the staff's point of view, the siding treatment is accentuating this large wall. So my proposal is to install these two shed roofs above over the two paired windows. The other recommendation of the staff is, if we keep the siding treatment that I did, which I sought permission for, then the entire first floor should get a traditional stucco treatment. And I found a house on Nebraska Avenue Northwest that is very similar to what the staff is suggesting. If you go to my presentation, Dan, please. The last slide. This house is on Nebraska Avenue Northwest, so that's a historic district. You can see that on the second floor, they have the same siding treatment, 1x3 trim work around the windows. On the first floor, they have bricks, and they have the bonding beam in between, and that I think is like successfully breaks up the front elevation. It's a very similar structure to mine.
Do you notice that the batten locations are more balanced than what you have?
Correct, yes.
And that comes from placing the panels, having forethought about how the panels get placed on the elevation and not just slapped up?
Correct, yeah, I admit that.
Dan, can you bring up your recommendations? Okay. So staff is recommending that we approve in part the fenestration alterations with the condition that detailed specification sheets with dimensions must be submitted for the new windows, and dimensions and specifications for the proposed roof and brackets must be keyed on revised elevation drawings. The rendered bay window projections must be removed from the left elevation and are not approved. And final approval authority to verify these details have been satisfied is delegated to staff. No final inspections for the property will be approved until this condition is satisfied and the HOP documents issued. And that the HPC deny the siding revision HOP under 24A, et cetera, et cetera. Explain the last one, please. The siding HOP denial.
So, I mean, the staff recommendation and finding is that the proposed siding, as presented in the application, were incompatible in form with the character of the site and the surrounding district. So that, and recommends that the HPC deny the HOP. So then we're sort of left without an approved condition. And then it would be up to the applicant to propose something different, or potentially the HPC on the dais could provide some additional guidance as to what they would accept. You know, again, alternatively, the HPC in its sort of, or the staff report in its closing paragraph said that, you know, if the HPC determined that because the size, scale, and massing of the proposal were not impacted by the siding changes, staff recommended 2 additional conditions that be added in order to sort of bring the design closer to what the HPC had originally approved for a more consistent appearance that we felt would break up the massing of the overall house. But again, that's only if the HPC decides that the siding in general is acceptable. But the conclusion that we reached was that the HPC should deny it.
Would
We deliberate.
we can deliberate? You said a traditional stucco material, would something like an ephes be acceptable?
So we didn't come up with a specification for that. Generally, we don't like ephes because it doesn't accurately, I mean, it doesn't accurately replicate stucco and it lacks the durability. So we tend not to recommend that for most, at least on most historic buildings, whether or not as an infill you're going to provide that much leniency, that's really up to the commissioners.
And you can do traditional stucco finish on a rain screen with the appropriate backup. Yeah.
I mean, Commissioner Doman is is right there. So there's your answer.
I guess mine, it was given the inflection of a question, but I know perfectly well it's a doable thing. All right, would the commissioners care to deliberate? Commissioner Doman.
The house that our applicant showed on Nebraska Avenue, is that actually in a historic district?
Yeah, that's.
It is?
Yeah, DC.
Okay, but it's not in Montgomery County, but it's in DC.
No, yeah, DC.
In DC. And as you have testified, it is very similar to
what
your
we are
house.
Suggesting if if the HPC approves.
Yeah.
I mean, it is historic, historic district, and they have similar. I was lucky. I'm glad that I found this picture of the house. I stopped the car and took a picture of the house. So they have similar siding treatment on the second floor, and at the first floor they have brick. So if we do stucco, I think the stucco can be applied on the hardy cement panels. I believe we can do that.
Yeah, that was my question. I mean, I think the way it's leading is that the first floor and the recommendation, the alternative recommendation is to make the first floor in stucco. Mm-hmm. And you are fairly certain that that can be done. Is that correct?
Will we have, we have cement panels. I'm sure we can apply stucco on top of it.
Okay.
There's something called micro cement, which is very similar to stucco, and it's very durable as well. Mm-hmm. So that's an option.
Okay, I find that, this is, what's this house? It's a nominal resource, nominal, which I think, as the guidelines are, we can be lenient in our application for the house, and I think you have been, this is discussion now, okay, comments. I think you've been responsive to the best of your ability here, and I think you've worked with staff for a lot of these changes. I think the house and the size is, since this is a nominal resource, fits in with the neighborhood. I would like to hear what other commissioners have to say, but I think there's some suggestions. Oh, the one suggestion staff had about the bay on the left side, to remove it. What was that about?
Sure, Commissioner Doman. I don't know why that. Hold on one second. There we go. So proposed on the left elevation, bringing it back here, the applicant The applicant proposes to install two very small roof overhangs, sort of almost as a window hood above these two paired casement windows. Staff finds that those are sort of an incongruent form and aren't balanced and compatible with the design, and are recommending that they not be installed. They haven't been installed to date. So we're recommending that we're okay with the right bay because of its limited visibility, particularly as it relates to the house next door. But we're recommending that the approval not extend to these features. And
I understand. Okay. So for the applicant, if I deviate and ask a question, this doesn't pose a problem for you, does it? To remove those little shed?
No, I'm volunteering.
They're not even installed, or?
No, of course
Okay.
not, no.
I
And
understand.
I'm volunteering to do that, and I was going to incur more cost to address that large wall. I don't have to do it. I mean, if you guys don't want to approve it, okay?
Okay, all right. That's all. Thanks.
Commissioner Pelletier.
Oh, my mic's been on this whole time. This reminds me of another project that we had on Carroll Avenue a few years ago, and we went around and around and around. And I think, my feeling is because this is a nominal resource, because last time we deferred it to get more details, which you gave us, and I don't think putting stucco on the first floor is going to make this house fit into the neighborhood at all. So I don't see the point of you having to do that. I do not like those little projections over the bays because they don't look modern. Like, you're doing a really modern house here, and those are kind of like farmhouse sort of awning things that I don't think it needs it. I would recommend not doing those. I don't have a problem with the bay where the stair is because you can hardly see it. But I would approve this in its current condition. You've saved the stucco. It's behind the furring. But the pictures show that the stucco is still there, that the original walls are still there. I think that satisfies for me, like, keeping some of this house, because I was originally thinking that there was none of the original house left. But I think based on the fact that it's a nominal resource, and we have spent a huge amount of time on this, and it's a nominal resource, I would say the condition about providing all the dimensions and specs, I'm fully on board with that. But the siding, in my mind, is a foregone conclusion. I don't see, I mean, one thing that we're not supposed to lean towards is causing great financial hardship to people that come in. And so, and I just don't see the point of that. So, like, in light of the fact that this is a nominal resource, we have spent hours on this house, you've done your best with it, I could approve it with the condition that you provide all the details to staff. So that's all I have to say about that.
Commissioner Haynes?
I concur with Commissioner Pelletier. I think adding the stucco in some ways will it's not going to really truly relate back to the older homes in the neighborhood. I think it may even proportionally make it look more awkward than it already looks. I think it is a foregone conclusion. I would keep with the exception of the front, I would fix the front as we were planning. I would not put those little shed roofs on the porches. That's silly. That's just.
On the porches?
The porches do not need little shed roof projections. No, don't do that. That's bad. As well as the left side. I'm okay with the right side bay window, but just extend that horizontal across as you proposed and get rid of some of the junk in that middle bay as you were proposing. I think that's fine, but you do not need those little shed. They do absolutely nothing for your facade. In fact, they make it worse. So I think we beat this project around. I think it's time to move it on, get the best we can get out of what he's done, and move on.
Commissioner Dominiani?
Yeah, I would like to just add that I sympathize with the applicant as well. It has been a long time, and he's attempting, it seems, to bring forward the correct drawings and satisfy kind of the conditions we're laying out. I think he's been pretty responsive overall. I'm okay with the changes to the windows. The right side bay by the stairs, I think, is all right with me as well. It's minimally projecting and also relatively hidden on that plane. I don't think any changes are required on the very large left side plane. With the small bump-out roofs over the bays of the windows as proposed, I don't think that that's necessary to propose at all. I think keeping it the way it is probably going to be fine. I believe that's foregone. And as for the front, I think if I'm understanding the drawings correctly, for the front siding, by making the pattern more regular across the windows in the front rather than having the awkward sort of L-shaped cuts, I'd be all right with that, as well as the 1x8 board across between the first and second stories as well. I think will be an improvement, more regularizing the pattern of siding there. So I agree with the comments of the other commissioners as well, and would add that I think that we've spent a great deal of time on this type of resource, and it would be great to move it along. Thank you.
Commissioner Nasser?
This is Commissioner Nasser. I agree with the first part of staff recommendation, the approval of the, with the exceptions that has to be revised. On the deny of the sightings, I think there has been a miscommunication here, unfortunately, because the applicant claims that they confirmed this with the staff, and I'm not still clear what happened there. But as other commissioners mentioned, we have spent too much time on it, and at this point, I think we can move forward. Just one more thing, comparing the image you showed with this project, it's not a good comparison. You can't, that's a totally different kind of look. The house is was done differently, and it's just not the matter of material. It's the way it was done. It's the way the use of the material on the first floor and the second floor. So you cannot just simply bring a picture of another project and say, oh, look at this, that's why I'm doing this. And to me, the pattern of the patterns on the front elevation should definitely be fixed. It's right now, they're all over the place. But in general, unfortunately, I think we discussed this enough and we should move forward.
Thank you. This is Chair Burdett. You know, one of the reasons we pay so much attention to non-contributing resources in these neighborhoods is because they create an environment for the contributing resources. And when something gets built or the non-contributing resources are changed in a way that all of a sudden they become the primary structure on the block, standing out from everything else, then that becomes a problem. And this house was a little one-story, very tiny, very modest house along with similar houses along that block. and it blended. It's not going to blend anymore. Right now, it's a big white box on the block. And that is unfortunate when there were so many different ways that this could have been handled.
I'm sorry,
I-
Chairman.
no,
Have you been
no,
to the
no,
street? Have you
no.
been to the street?
I have been to the street, thank you.
Have you seen all the different styles of the houses there?
I have. And
The
that
mid-century
you're done.
houses?
I'm sorry, sir, you are done. We are deliberating. I'm giving you my final comments. We will give a vote, and it will be over with. Do you understand me?
Yes.
Okay. So with that said, I agree with the other commissioners that the little shed things on the front and on that one large side are unnecessary. The one for the bay is acceptable because it's not seen and you have to have that bay to be code compliant. And fix the battens on the front. I can't say you can't do paint, but I think you should really take a hard look at it before you do it. The windows are in, there's nothing to be done about that. So I think we can have a motion to follow the staff recommendations.
I'm sorry, if I may again, like the staff don't have a problem with the roofs over the porches. I mean I can, and I have a problem with one porch that is that the header is depressed inside by like 8 inches. I received the comments from the street, actually from the neighbors, that they told me it looks a bit awkward. Just this particular section that the header is pushed back from the plane of the wall. So can I, and as I said, like the staff, they don't have a problem with, they just need the more specification, like the size of the bracket. Can I at least like install one on the main porch?
No. Don't do it.
Okay.
All right, let's make a motion.
You said none. I think we have a disagreement because I don't see any problem with a little shed over the porches. I don't see any problem with that.
The porches already have depth to it. It's already got coverage. It's already covering the doors. It's already providing shade to the entryway. There's no, to use these little shed thingies and brackets to fix a problem is going to look odd. It's just going to continue. It's a spiraling detail that's being added that doesn't really help. It's trying to fix a problem, but architecturally, it's just going to continue to be uncohesive or incohesive. Or I don't even know the word I'm trying to. It's just
What
not
about
going to
padding
work.
it out?
Huh?
What about padding it
Yeah,
out?
pad out the beam so it's flush. I don't mind the reveal of the post back.
Right.
And just run that horizontal 1x8
fill it up.
across and around, and you're done. And trim out your posts, not with brackets, but just trim them out, and it'll be fine. Trust me, less is more in this case.
Yeah, and the brackets really, they don't go with the
Yeah, the
aesthetic
brackets
of the
don't
house.
stylistically go with the
I
house.
don't have to add the brackets, but like the neighbors told me something is missing in this area,
you
in this
know,
section.
Oh, the neighbor? Don't listen to them.
No, I know. I agree with them. I agree with them. It looks a bit awkward.
I actually think the back of the rear elevation of your house is the best and should
Yeah,
be
me
in the
too.
front, but that's not going to happen. So don't make a bad situation worse. Just simplify. And the problem with your front elevation, with the whole house, is you didn't think through the batten locations, the joints from the beginning. That should have regulated your entire facade.
That's true.
The example that you showed did that. And that's why that example is great, but that's not your house. You have the same material and system, but the applications are not the same. And so unless you're willing to strip all your battens and rework it, don't keep making it worse. Just simplify.
In light of the comments, and it's best just to agree and and don't put it up, okay, or fill it in, okay? That'll get you over the hump then.
All right, I'm going to try this. I make a motion that, oh, I don't know. Look,
I'll give it a shot.
you give it a shot. Thank you.
All right. I move that the HPC approve the following HOP number 1091229 at 112 Menlo Avenue, Silver Spring, that we approve the fenestration alterations with the exception of the front elevation and left side, that we remove the shed awnings that were proposed, the brackets, that we run the 1x8 horizontal band board per the Figure 4 revised 2025 condition shown on the application. And that we also approve the siding in its entirety, that we do not require any first floor stucco or other treatment to the exterior facade, that we allow it to, we approve it as built with no other changes.
Do I have a second for that?
This is Commissioner Pelletier, a second.
Just before you vote, Madam Chair, Commissioner Haynes, just to be sure, so your motion is that on the elevation, on the front elevation, that a 1x8 band board be installed at the header height of the, hold on, let me bring the elevation up, the header height of the window that carries across to fill in the recess at the header of the porch on the left?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that they get rid of on the second floor, those windows, the little square boxes, trim work underneath those paired second floor windows, as indicated in the drawing, the Figure 4 drawing on page 5.
Is staff okay with that? Staff understand that?
Yes, Madam Chair. Does the motion also delegate final approval authority to staff, or do the commissioners want this to be submitted as a revised HOP?
I think we delegate to staff, please.
Yeah, second with the.
This is Commissioner Pelletier, a second with the stated details.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair abstains. This motion passes.
I'm sorry, did we get a vote from Commissioner Nasser?
Yes, I said aye.
Okay, thank you.
So 5 ayes, 1 abstention. This HOP passes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. It was a painful process, unintentionally, promise, and hopefully I wouldn't come before the commission again. But thank you so much. I appreciate everything you're doing. Thank you.
This commission would like to take a 5-minute break, and I'm sorry you have to wait. That's okay. That's all right. Everybody needs a 5-minute break. Thank you.
All right. All right, Madam Chair, members of the commission, we're back live.
Thank you for your patience. We're now moving on to preliminary 3A at 80112 Hamden Lane, Bethesda. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is, Madam Chair. This is a preliminary consultation for a contributing resource in the Greenwich Forest Historic District. It was constructed circa 1938 with a 1994 side projecting addition. This is to be reviewed under the Greenwich Forest Historic District Design Guidelines, Montgomery County Code Chapter 24A, and the Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation. You see it's here along the western edge of the historic district. So the applicant proposes to remove the existing slate roof and install a new architectural shingle roof. This is a detail of the building you see, sort of a modeled with a slate roof with greens and reds. The report provided indicated that there were over 500 slates that were damaged or cracked, and that at a certain point the roof reaches a sort of a tipping point where it needs to be removed rather than replaced. I'll just note that there are 2 sections of 3-tab asphalt shingle on the rear of the 1994 addition, and then I don't have a date for when this 1-story shed roof addition was constructed, but it also has 3-tab asphalt shingles, although the original side porch has slate on it still. So the reason that we're here is guideline D7 is either internally inconsistent or just a little convoluted. I've broken this up into a number of bullet points. So guideline D7 in the design guidelines is regarding building materials, which says replacement of roof, siding, and trim with original materials is strongly recommended and is considered a maintenance that will not require an application for a work permit. That's in-kind replacement, which is acceptable in every historic property. It says the use of non-original like materials such as architectural asphalt shingles requires a work permit to ensure that they match the scale, texture, and design of the original materials and are consistent with the overall design of the existing house. And then it goes on, for example, homeowners wishing to replace slate or tile roofs may use alternative materials that match the scale, texture, and detail of the roof being replaced. And finally, if an original slate or tile roof had been replaced with non-original material before July 1st, 2011, the homeowner may replace the existing roof in kind or with another material consistent with the architectural style of the house. That is not applicable here. So the proposed shingle, so again, staff finds that the existing roof has likely reached the end of its usable life, and staff would recommend the HPC approve its removal as a HOP. But staff does not find the proposed timberline shingle consistent with guideline D7, and staff would not support its approval. Just doing a little bit of research, staff identified 2 slate roof replacements in the last 5 years in Greenwich Forest. However, both of those were slate for slate, so no HOP was required, and those were eligible for the county tax credits. I did find 1 roof replacement on a 2012 HOP, which was, I think, either the first or second HOP in the Greenwich Forest Historic District after it was established. And the applicant, well, after a first deferral, the applicant proposed Grand Manor architectural shingles, and the HPC found that these were compatible under D7 and generally matched the depth and dimensions of the historic material. So that is actually across the street. It is 8017 Hamden Lane. They installed them in a dark gray. I've provided them in, I don't remember what red or brown color they call it, just because the details are better represented in the detail image. So staff also identified that there are, Certainty makes a Highland slate architectural shingle, which are rectangles. And then GAF has a slate line which also sort of emulate the shape of slate, which may also work. So staff finds that the design guidelines appear to be internally contradictory about when it is okay or isn't okay to use an architectural shingle specifically. But staff finds the proposed shingle fails in the requirement that the material match the original and that the overall design of the existing house. So a number of questions for this preliminary consultation to provide staff as much guidance and direction in future roof replacements as it is the current applicant. So specifically to this project, does the HPC concur with staff's finding that the proposed landmark shingle is incompatible? Is natural slate the only material that would be appropriate under the requisite guidance? Does the HPC find that the previously approved Grand Manor shingle is compatible with the character of the material and property? Just as a reminder, your decisions don't set precedent, but you are informed by your prior decisions. Would the HPC prefer that the applicant examine a synthetic slate product that would replicate the dimensions and texture, but perhaps not the reflectivity of the historic slate? And are there any additional materials or samples that would make the HPC make a final determination? And once we get those questions figured out, we can provide the applicant with some guidance and hopefully move on to a successful roof replacement. I'll answer any questions that you have at this time.
This is Chair Burdett. I have the first question. Is the Grand Manor slate still in production?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? Commissioner Pelletier.
Yeah, in your report, I was confused. Okay, so the proposed shingles are the landmark, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then you had the picture of the house across the street, and those are the Grand Manor.
That's, yes, as identified in the staff report and pulling up the material from the website a couple days ago.
Okay, so you had said in the report, while the HPC and staff found the proposed shingles satisfied guideline D7 in 2012, after 13 years, staff is unconvinced that is the case. Staff finds that the Grand Manor is a more compatible replacement than the, okay, maybe this got correct. I was confused. So the Grand Manor, you're okay with the Grand Manor?
Well, so I mean, again, there's been one instance in the 13 years that the district has been established where that we found that the HPC has reviewed and approved a hop to replace the slate with an architectural shingle, and this was the architectural shingle that the HPC approved.
So the one across the street is the Grand Manor?
Correct. That's
Okay.
that's the house in front of you in the image.
Got it, yeah. And this is one of the sites I was able to do a drive-by on. I didn't, yeah, okay. Okay, so your recommendation is the Grand Manor over the landmark, and the landmark is what is proposed?
The landmark was what was proposed, and
Yeah.
we found that to be incompatible.
Gotcha.
But again, the question then is, how far along do the architectural shingles have to be, or what criteria did the architectural shingles need to satisfy
Right.
to be compatible? Again, the guideline requires that they match the scale, texture, and detail of the original materials.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That clears that up.
Commissioner Doman?
Yeah, the Grand Manor is actually a asphalt type shingle, is that correct?
Yeah,
It'd be like a 3-tab, only thicker.
Right, like, yes.
Okay. Do we have any precedent where we actually have used like synthetic slate on houses? I mean, I'm not that familiar with the products, but I assume that there are slate products that look like slate.
In this district, the HPC approved a synthetic slate product called Majestic Slate on additions to a house on Overhill. I believe it's 7823, but don't hold me to that address. So there's a side projecting and rear addition to a house with a slate roof. The HOP maintained the slate roof on the existing house, but approved a synthetic product on the additions.
Okay, and I've not seen these products. I guess if I could drive by, I could take a look at the address you just gave me, take a look and see if it appears as a slate roof.
I mean, so the synthetic products have gotten substantially better, but they're not. I think typically where they fail is in the shine. Natural slate starts duller and continues to dull and get dirty. These materials, which are basically a petroleum product, they are shinier and sort of not like shiny like a a white vinyl fence is shiny, but they are shinier and they tend not to dull in the same way that the natural product does. So the HPC has approved synthetic slate, but it's going back, it's only been on additions or completely new construction within historic districts.
Commissioner Dominiani?
I have a question for staff. With the Grand Manor shingles, the sample photo provided here, is this the only color these shingles come in as well?
No, they come in several different colors, but just I wanted to blow it up so you had the sufficient detail.
Okay.
And I selected a color where that detail was more readily visible than, you know, the dark color that they went up on this house is a little bit more difficult to see the fine-grained details. So I selected this color just for visibility's sake. And I mean, there are colors that are more consistent with with this slate roof that are available.
Got it. And just so you can remind me, if you don't mind, I understand that we're considering whether the roof replacement product would match the scale, texture, et cetera. Do we also consider color when it comes to roof replacement material? I know with paint, for example, we've discussed how that could be outside our purview, but if you don't mind, I'd appreciate the reminder.
I mean, I think that, you know, looking at the character of the material, this is I mean, the slate's a natural product, and they did select 3 different colors of slate. But I think that more than a specific color, sort of a tone or sort of a family is something that you could certainly direct the applicant towards without saying it has to be this specific color. So you know, I think that the replacement roof should generally sort of feel the same as what's there, I think is the objective that the guideline is chasing, without having to get into being completely prescriptive.
Commissioner Nasser, do you have questions?
I have a question, not sure, Dan, if you know the answer. Is there a significant price difference between the 2 materials?
Yes, there is. Yes.
The applicant's nodding yes, Commissioner Nasser. So I think when it's time for the applicant to make their presentation, that you'll be provided with that information.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
This is Rebecca Ballo again for the record. But again, to note, cost is not a consideration for the HPC.
Sure. I was just curious and wanted to know if that's a factor in making this decision for the applicant.
Sure,
Thank you.
of course.
This is Chair Burdett, and also replacement in kind is, they can apply for tax credits where replacement with non-matching material, like actual slate, would not comply.
Correct, and the applicants are aware of that.
Okay. With that said, I think it's time to let the applicants give their presentation, which is Gordon Franken, the owner, and he's remote.
Yeah.
And then Brooke Heiberger.
That's correct, yeah.
And if you will,
Yeah.
the mic's on, so explain your relationship, and then also, Mr. Franken, we'll want you to identify yourself by name and your relationship to this project.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come and speak tonight. I know it's late, so we'll be brief. My name is Brooke Heiberger. I am an agent with the Jane Fairweather team of Long and Foster. We sell a lot of historic homes and a lot of homes in historic districts, so I'm very well familiar with this process. I want to give you a little bit of background as to why this has become a little bit of a difficult issue. And I'm sure we've all bared witness to this, but a big storm rolls through our area, and for the next week, we have roofing contractors knocking on our door saying, "Oh, I can get you a roof for free. I'll get you your insurance to pay for it." Well, in 2018, 2019, the insurance companies got very upset that they were bleeding, and basically have put out policies now that if a roof is, and it depends on the insurance company, some it's 10 years, some it's 15, and some it's 20, but if they are older than that age, they want a roofer to certify that there is still useful life left in the roof, or they won't provide property insurance. So you can imagine that this has become a very difficult issue in real estate transactions. I think there's a little bit more leeway with a slate because a slate product is designed to last much longer than a shingle, for example. But even despite my client's best maintenance over the years, there comes a point in time where any structural system is just going to need to be replaced. So we have an issue now where we have homeowners that are needing to make major investments in their property in order to get them sold. And I understand that price is not a factor when it comes to historic, but I guess what I'm asking for is some consideration of flexibility. I think it's one thing to ask a homeowner to spend $60,000 in this case for a slate roof. And by the way, there's a lot of roofers who don't work with slate anymore, versus $17,000 for a shingle. It's one thing if they're going to stay in the house and enjoy it for 10 years, and it's another thing to ask them to improve a property that they're no longer living in. In this case, we had a home inspector come out to the house and basically said it doesn't make sense to maintain the roof anymore. On the south side of the house, there were at least 500 broken tiles, and once you get to a number like that, it just makes more sense to replace it. Now, I didn't take that inspector's word for it. I had 2 roofing contractors that I work personally with come out and inspect the roof, and both of them shared with me that they would not certify that roof, that roof needed to be replaced. And so I asked them to provide me with 3 quotes: an architectural shingle at $17,200, a synthetic slate, and that would be between $38,000 and $40,000, and an actual slate, and that's $60,000 for this property. Obviously, it's going to vary from house to house. Even with the 25% tax credit, we're more than double having to go with a synthetic slate or a real slate. And so the question becomes, what is the appropriate material to put on the roof, balanced with keeping the architectural integrity of the neighborhood, Greenwich Forest, versus not being cost prohibitive to a seller? Greenwich Forest is a pretty eclectic neighborhood in the historic district, and I recognize that that's also based on when things got replaced. Prior to 2011, if someone took off a slate roof, they put an architectural shingle on, that's one thing. Maybe if it happened later, that's another thing. All I can say from spending a lot of time and selling a lot of houses on this street is that if you look at the roofs around this house, including the 2 houses directly across the street, they both have architectural shingle. And so it's sort of my feeling, and again, it's just my opinion, that I don't think changing the material of the roof is necessarily changing the architectural dynamic of the neighborhood. When you're looking at this house from the road, you're still going to see a 2-story Tudor that was built in 1938. There's no additions or anything to change that structure. We're just going to have a different looking roof. My client, and he can speak in a second, we are not wed to a landmark tile. I wanted to select a high-end tile, a shingle, that came with a 50-year warranty, because obviously we want to put high-quality materials on historic homes. But if you want to switch that to a Glen Manor, if you wanted to switch that to a different color, we're sort of not invested in that. We just want to know what the guidelines are and hoping that there's some flexibility that we can find a way so that my clients can move on to the next chapter without having to spend an exorbitant amount of money. The insurance companies are sending up drones now. They're looking at Google satellites. And so I'm going to guess, and I'm not a mind reader, when they see 500 broken tiles on the south side of this house, they're going to tell our prospective buyers, I'm sorry, we won't insure it, or we'll insure it, but we're not going to give you full roof replacement because you're not starting with a new roof. And so we're just trying to be very proactive about this so that I can successfully get all of the clients to a settlement table. Gordon, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Gordon Franken. I'm the owner of 8012 Hamden. Briefly, just want to say, appreciate the commission's time, appreciate staff's time in preparing the detailed review. We've lived in this house for 7 years and recently had to move out due to a job relocation. So, yeah, I can't really add too much more to what Brooke said. We're really open to other types of shingle products. You know, we'll find the most appropriate one, most appropriate color, shape, texture, et cetera. But kind of as Brooke pointed out, the cost differences between the shingle and even the synthetic slate product is pretty significant. You know, it really changes the evaluation of the homeowner and a potential buyer. We already had one, we lost one buyer already, and you know, now we're looking to replace the roof just to make sure we can retain a second one, right? So just specifically the house across the street, 8017, I spoke to our neighbor. I believe he originally came to the committee back in 2012 with the architectural shingle like the landmark. I believe the Grand Manor was what the committee recommended as part of the back and forth discussion, and that's what he went with. So, you know, that would be kind of my request, that given that's the property right across the street, there'll be some kind of local consistency there. You know, I've been looking at some of the pictures online of the Grand Manor tile, and you know, from anything more than 10 feet away, I think it's actually a pretty good representation, or at least kind of, you know, meets the overall appearance at a much more, obviously much more pleasant price point. So yeah, I just asked the committee to evaluate specifically what an appropriate shingle product would be for this replacement. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the applicants? No? No? Okay. I guess we can just, oh, Commissioner Haynes has a question.
Well, maybe just more of a clarification. So currently, the house is not leaking, or is there been evidence of the roof leaking?
There is evidence of water intrusion in the attic. So that's why it really needs to get done sooner than later.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Well, with that, we can start our deliberations. I think I'll start tonight. Yeah, slate roofs are wonderful because they last 100 years, but they do have their lifespan. And they tend to cascade figuratively and literally when they start to fail. When one goes, the rest start to go. And I'm all for replacing in kind, but slate roofs are extraordinarily expensive. And if an owner has the resources to replace in kind, then I think more power to them. But not all of our applicants have the resources. And we've touched on this with other properties, whether it was slate or shake or whatever. So I would support a replacement product on this house. Now, the one that they submitted, I don't think looks that good.
It's fine.
I think the Grand Manor looks better. And you all know that I am not a fan of petroleum products at all. No. So I'm not sure, even though the petroleum product, is it the EcoStar Majestic? It looks the closest. And if the owner wanted to do something like the EcoStar Majestic that really looks like slate, then I would have a hard time denying it, even if I think we have looked at them and they do stay shiny, and that's part of the problem. And again, they talk about recycling, but seriously, I mean, that's up for questions with the manufacturer. But I do think I would support replacement, but I think the applicant needs to go find a better looking shingle, something that, and again, like you said, across the street, the Grand Manor, it looks really good.
Yeah.
Then that would be the argument to bring back with a hop.
Okay.
Next. Commissioner Pelletier?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I don't have an issue with the asphalt replacement product, but I think the great thing about the current slate roof is the color. You know, and that, the one thing, I thought the house across the street, it looked good, but it's very uniform and very kind of homogeneous, and the beauty of that roof on that house is that it's all different colors, and so I guess I would be okay with the asphalt replacement if it had a more structural look, like I think the Grand Manor, but that it had more variegated colors in it. And I don't know if we're allowed to talk about color, but that is because what you have, the existing is so pretty, you know, and it's such a key feature on the house. And I think if you found something that kind of matched that variegation and did get the shadows and kind of the look of the slate, I would be okay with that.
This is Commissioner Haynes. I'll throw my 2 cents in. Part of the beauty of the Tudor style architecture is the different materials that's used. You have brick, you have stone, you have slate roof, and the different textures it creates is what gives it the house overall interest. I'm more of a proponent for the synthetic slate, because I think you can achieve the texture and color in that, which 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I mean, you know, and I'm just wondering if given the market, that the cost delta between a synthetic and asphalt, you know, couldn't be covered in the sale of the house. I mean, people would look at that and say, hey, most people would think it's an upgrade from asphalt. And probably a homeowner that's going to buy in that neighborhood has the resources that could cover your costs to do that. So I would urge you to look at some synthetics myself, and I just think you can get, no matter how you slice it, asphalt shingle is not going to look like slate. I mean, it can get kind of close from a distance if you squint your eyes. But I do think the synthetics do a pretty good job, at least from the street, and the texture, the color. I think it's kind of the best of both worlds from cost and aesthetics.
Commissioner Doman?
I'm going to be the odd man out, I guess, on this one. Normally, I believe alternative materials are acceptable. I mean, we've had this long discussion about decking. And it ends up being that it boils down under Secretary of Interior's guidelines is that we have the same material, if available. And part of the problem with decking is that we don't have old growth lumber anymore, so we are looking at synthetics. But the commission has taken a position that wood is wood, and if you have a wood deck, it has to be wood. And my position is, if this is a slate roof, I believe it should be replaced with a slate roof. Material is important in this case. It's color, texture, size, and material is important. And I think I would like to see this retained as a slate roof. I realize that we do not consider cost, even though I understand it's horrible. I think the slate is important. This is a contributing resource in the neighborhood. I think we should have it. And if am correct, I think staff said that the last two houses that were replaced were in fact done with slate. Is that correct? The last two homes?
Yes, that is correct.
So I think we have an ongoing precedent. I mean, I know we don't go by precedent. I understand all that and everything, but the requirement was slate, and it's the same material that's on the house. And the previous two hops that came before the HBC were slate roofs and were replaced with slate roofs. And I think this house should remain as a slate roof, unless, of course, I don't argue that something else might look good. I don't argue that something else might be cheaper. I don't argue all that. I think within our Secretary of Interior guidelines, we need to stay with slate because slate is available, and that's what's on the house right now, and that's what I want to see on it. So I will not, I'm not acceptable with a synthetic product on this house.
So just to remind you, Commissioner Doman, that the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines are one of the documents that we look to provide guidance. There is, however, an exception when the guideline is when there is a local guideline that is explicitly contradictory with the Secretary of the Interior's standards, the local adopted guideline controls. And I just want to point you to that third bullet point in the screen in front of you, where the guideline does authorize the use of alternative materials, but provided it matches the scale, texture, and detail of the roof being replaced. So the question is, how closely does that alternative material need to match the scale, texture, and detail? I agree with you that slate would be the most appropriate material and would last 100 or 120 years. However, the guidance that we need to follow in this specific district is unique to this district and does offer a little more flexibility to property owners.
Okay, but we have had some precedent, not that that's the correct word, that previous homes that had roofs repaired that were slate roofs were repaired with slate.
They presented a proposal to HP staff, and we determined that it did not require a historic area work permit as it was a replacement in kind.
Right.
So yes, they submitted that. Their letter that they get that says that this waives the HOP requirement also says this work is eligible for the county's historic preservation tax credit, and they include that letter when they submit their tax credit, which makes our job reviewing those tax credits much easier because we've already made the determination that that work qualifies.
Yeah.
So it does serve two functions, but it's more just a running it by staff to make sure that we know what's going on and that we're okay with it. We like it when people come for in-kind review because we can catch anything that may go south because it's not in kind. But again, the first bullet strongly encourages replacement in kind, and we do that all the time as a best practice. But then the guidelines do go on to provide a little more flexibility and wiggle room, and with guardrails. I mean, it does, it's, so the question, our question is sort of how closely do those materials need to match the scale, texture, and detail? Does, for example, this shingle, I mean, we don't have decent photos of this house prior to the roof replacement, but is this architectural shingle matching the scale, texture, and detail of the roof that's being replaced? So that's really, again, why we're here this evening is just a little more guidance. There are only 48, 60 resources in this district, 60-ish. And so we're just trying to provide, hopefully that you can provide us with some guidance in addition to providing this specific applicant with some guidance, and help property owners in the future when they come in when materials do invariably fail.
I think also there's, if I could just reinforce respectfully, that I think there's a difference in priority. So if, like, Gordon and Amy moved in and found out they needed a new roof and they were planning on spending the next 15 years at the house, my guess is they would go with a slate roof because it's A, easier to get through the process and they'll be able to enjoy it for many years to come. I think the motivation and whether or not that factors into your decision-making to put on such an expensive product when they were no longer going to be owning the home unfairly puts a financial burden on them that I think can be resolved in other ways. But that's my opinion. Obviously, I have to defer to you.
Can I ask a question, or think about this for a minute? If the current owner, who no longer lives in the house and isn't going to be moving back, has to put on a very expensive roof, couldn't they then add that to the cost of the house, the selling price of the house?
So I would like to say theoretically, yes. The last 5 years, we've been in a complete seller's market where sellers could write 100% of their terms. And I would tell my buyer clients that unless you're willing to give away your firstborn, you're not getting a house. That market has shifted. And we are in a much more balanced market. We have the highest inventory right now, particularly in Montgomery County, since 2019. The days on the market have climbed. And we actually had to reduce the price of this house 1, 2, 3 times to get an offer. I mean, I believe that buyers are getting an unbelievable value at the price that they're getting this house, because a couple years ago, it probably would have been about $250,000 more than what the market value is right now. So it just depends on the market.
Thank you.
I have an additional question, if you don't mind.
Commissioner
This is
Dominiani?
Commissioner Dominiani. This house in particular that we're looking at, which is beautiful, by the way. I think
Thank
that this
you.
is
It
a
is a
stunning
gorgeous house,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I actually find the slate roof to be one of these beautiful characteristics of a house like this in this neighborhood, and I find that the slate is, in general, I think, probably what I would prefer. But there is the addition on this house, correct, which has
a 3-tab.
A 3-tab roof on it. So are your roof proposals that you've gotten from these roofers
Replace the whole thing so we have a uniform roof.
uniform?
Yeah.
And do you think there'd be a significant cost delta, and I'm wondering what the commissioners would think, to replace slate with slate and then replace shingle with shingle for the various parts of the house that aren't original, that are parts of if it's addition, replacing that part in kind as well, and whether that might make an impact on this overall cost?
So the honest answer is I'm not quite sure, because I don't know that the square footage of the main section. I was basically told that it's like $2,000 a box for slate. And we're talking about the main portion of the house. So while I think we would see a reduction in price if we kept slate in the main place and just removed the shingle, I don't know if it's going to make that much of an impact on the total expenditure for a new roof.
It strikes me because sometimes on some historic houses that we look at, we seek to distinguish the original historic part of the house from the additions in one way or another, whether it's through changes in siding or creating a hyphen in some cases too. And it strikes me as a little, perhaps like countering that logic by applying the same roof across all different roof planes, old and new. I'm sort of struggling with that a little bit. I would say, though, that in general, I tend not to like the asphalt shingles very much, but if we had to pick one, I would pick one which is shaped sort of similar to the way that slates are shaped, and that the one that was shown originally as proposed, does look very uniform, and from far away, they're sort of blend into one gigantic mass, and some of the other more architectural ones that are shaped with rounded edges, et cetera, replicating the shape of slate a bit better, perhaps I could favor. But yeah, if it was my house, and I'd love to buy your house, but I would prefer to see slate. And I think I would prefer that over a synthetic slate alternative also.
Thank you. Commissioner Nasser, would you like to weigh in?
Just quickly, don't have much to add. Of course, slate is more appropriate and preferable, but I understand the financial burden of it. But hopefully someone who's willing to buy a historic house would appreciate and understand it. And it would add to the value of your house. But I would also support a alternative material if it matches the scale and texture of the existing slate.
Thank you. Well, I think you've heard a wide array of opinions. I'm glad we're not voting tonight. You are probably too.
Yes.
So I think you've heard there are several commissioners who would favor a slate roof for the look of the house and the quality of the roof and the value that the slate adds. And other commissioners who are willing to accept replacement, just not the one
That I selected.
you
That's
selected.
fine, yeah.
And I think it might be worth working with staff to really, your
Gather
client.
some samples and bring them in, yeah.
And bring them in and look at them and get some representative examples in that area that the commissioners can go drive
Okay.
and look at. And I'll leave it up to staff if, when that gets to a point that they feel that it's ready to come forward for a HOP or a preliminary. HOP, he says. Do a HOP.
We would like to be able to do it as a HOP. I think you've given us enough guidance that we can work with the applicant and their team to bring it forward for a HOP. Also because the property is currently on the market.
Yeah.
And we understand that, and there's not a wide range of options, though there is a.
There's a few out there.
A few.
There's
right.
a few out there.
Right.
Can I chime in here?
Sure.
I'm just Googling this. There's some, GAF has a product called Slate Line. Have you looked at that? It's asphalt. But I can't tell from the picture, like, it looks very, very regular, but I'm curious if you guys have
So
looked at that.
staff member Di Pasquale has used that, or has experience with that in her previous job in Philadelphia, and has found that to be a reasonable substitute for slate.
Okay.
Can I add
Yes.
that
Yeah,
typically it is for very consistent colored slate and not the variegated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But they do have a color called weathered slate, so anyway, GAF Slate Line.
Okay.
Worth a look.
And that's one of the, it's interesting looking at the existing color of the roof and the variations of that, of the existing. And that's going to be very hard to replicate even with a replacement slate
Slate,
roof.
right, it's a natural stone, exactly.
Because
yeah.
it's, that kind of pink is not typical here in the DC area for slate roofs. I would make one suggestion is that depending on where the vote ends up for the HOP, you might look into actually salvaging as much of that slate as you can for a secondary market, simply because there are people who will re-roof their properties in slate, and slate's a lot cheaper if it's secondary market. Go ahead, Commissioner Doman.
I just want to add one more thing. I agree with what Chairman Burnett said and what Commissioner Dominini said. I think there's the $60,000 that you threw out there maybe at the high end. I think if we can reuse any of that slate, I think that's an important thing to look into. And I think putting shingles where there are shingles will also reduce your cost. But I think from the front of the house, this picture that we have here with the slate on the roof, I think the material should stay slate. That's how I feel right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Franken, for phoning in remotely. We do appreciate it.
Perfect,
Thank
thank
you
you so
very
much for
And we,
listening to us.
we hope to see you with a HOP soon.
Yes, absolutely, I will get you what you need.
Thank you.
Thank you to the commission.
Moving on, we're going to do meeting minutes from July 9th, 2025. Did anybody read them?
This is Commissioner Dominiani. I read the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Dominiani. We appreciate that. Would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, to my eye, the meeting minutes looked all right, and in line with that, I would make a motion that we approve the July 9th, 2025 meeting minutes.
Thank you, and I second that motion because I read them. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye, unanimous. What? It's a unanimous. Next is commission item. The only thing I've got is I testified for the Jordan House. up in Germantown, and the planning board voted against nominating or designating it. And this was the house that had been not designated because it was excluded from the Germantown. We all wanted it in. Staff said no, staff recommended no, and the planning board's like, well, it wasn't done last time. Has anything changed? Okay, no, we're not gonna do it.
When you say staff, you mean our staff?
Yeah.
Planning board staff.
That was us.
That was, our
we
staff.
did
It was our staff.
It was us.
No, they said no, and we said
Yes.
and then planning said
No.
And then planning board said no.
Yeah. So that's all I got for commission items. Staff?
No staff items, just a reminder again on the record, we are convening August virtually. I'll send out lots of reminders for that, but all virtual.
And very happy to have Commissioner Nasser back. We have missed you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry I was not able to be there in person. I wish to see you all soon.
And this meeting is adjourned. Good night.